cultivating a tree of life in the world of wizards. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 51 Law Enforcement Wizards and the Wizard Council. Triumph City. Paul hurriedly informed the Wizard Council of the appearance of the necromancer wizard apprentice. The Wizard Council then sent 3 formal wizard-level law enforcement wizards to search for him. One of the formal wizards had once studied supernatural creature cultivation as a minor and had cultivated a dark raven since his student days at the Kingdom Wizard Academy. He released a black crow with green eyes, and it circled in the sky at a height of 1,000 meters around the Wild Beer Bar. After casting the magic, vision sharing, his eyes turned white, and his spirit entered the dark raven, searching the vicinity with the dark raven's eyes. However, after searching for a while, he could not find even a trace. The other 2 wizards also searched in various ways, but they also found nothing. The 3 law enforcement wizards could not help but wonder. According to Paul's description, the Wizard of the Necromancer Society could only barely block the first level medium level magic flame flow. Moreover, the energy particles released when performing witchcraft did not fluctuate much, so it was most likely a wizard apprentice. Logically speaking, a wizard apprentice, using the shadow gem, across a distance of 1,000 meters in space, is already the limit. If the distance is farther, their bodies will be directly twisted and collapsed in the alien space. Could it be that someone in that area is supporting the Necromancer Society? One of the law enforcement wizards proposed this possibility. But the search area will affect each household. Especially here is the city within the city of Triumph, where many nobles and wizards live. It is not something they can search casually. Therefore, the 3 law enforcement wizards can only return to the Wizard Council first, report the situation to the Wizard Council, and let the top leaders of the Wizard Council decide. If the top leaders pay enough attention, they will sign a search warrant and send more people to search. After Ronan dealt with Marin's body in the Zeuxan world, he slapped a few cleaning talismans on himself, changed into the clothes of the wizard world, and traveled back to the small attic. As soon as he returned to the attic, Ronan laid out the materials for drawing talismans on the desk to improve his proficiency. Talismans: Flying Sword Talisman, Grandmaster 81%, Golden Armor Talisman, Master 35%, Chasing Wind Talisman, Master 31%. After working for more than an hour, he began to practice the ancient wood longevity technique. It was not until late at night that he slapped several cleaning talismans on himself, changed into loose pajamas, and went to bed. At noon the next day, Ronan was facing his natal longevity tree and releasing the rapid growth technique. Suddenly, he felt something in his heart and knew that someone was approaching his attic. Now, he has practiced the Yan Shenju and has the blessing of the heart of nature. The release range of his spiritual consciousness is already 130 meters in radius, and everything his spiritual consciousness perceives is clearer than before. After he focused his spiritual consciousness on the person who came, in his mind, Paul's bird's nest-like curly hair, freckled face, and lean body immediately emerged clearly. He summoned Hong Meng, and could also get Paul's numerical value. Paul is a wizard of A-level qualification, and is currently a 2nd level wizard apprentice, which is a little worse than him. Moreover, in terms of spirit and magic power, he is not only inferior to him, but also inferior to Marin, the wizard apprentice of the Necromancer Society yesterday. However, Paul is only 18 years old now, while Marin is already 20 years old. Knock knock knock. Ronan, are you home? Soon, Paul went up to the attic and knocked on the door while calling. Ronan immediately went to open the door. After Paul entered the house, he immediately sat down on the chair next to the dining table. Judging from his expression, he seemed a little angry. Those guys in the Wizard Council are really just taking money and not doing any work. After Ronan closed the door, Paul immediately said, they can't even catch a wizard apprentice from the necromancer. No wonder the necromancer was rampant a few months ago, and a few months later, the necromancer is still so rampant. It turns out that their efficiency is so low. It took 3 people to sign a search warrant, and it took a full hour. Although they asked the city guard to seal off the area during that hour. What was the use? The necromancers will definitely use the shadow shift gem again to get out of that area. Humph. After I graduate from the academy and join the wizard council, I will definitely sort everything out. Ronan poured him a glass of wine while listening to Paul's bragging. Paul saw Ronan pour the wine, picked up the glass and drank it, then continued. Yesterday, that guy actually said he wanted to take revenge on us. We didn't do anything. Damn, our luck is so bad that drinking wine can cause trouble for the undead society. But I'm fine. I'm hiding in the academy. Even if that guy wants to take revenge on me, he can't do anything to me. But you, it's dangerous if you're here. Why don't you go back to Redwood territory to hide? After you go back, that guy won't travel thousands of miles to find you. Ronan shook his head. In Redwood territory, not to mention formal wizards, even wizard apprentices are rare. If you practice there, you have to ask someone to transport a piece of witchcraft material from other parts of the kingdom. Not only is it slow, it's also expensive. How can it be as convenient as Triumph City? Paul wanted to say that with Ronan's qualifications, even if he practiced less for a period of time, his progress would not be greatly affected. However, considering Ronan's feelings, he didn't say it. When the word came to his lips, he used his mind to connect to his storage ring and took out 3 medicine bottles from it. This is the initial active potion. After drinking it, the activity of the muscles of the whole body will be enhanced, and you will run much faster. Enter Fiau Lane to the east of here, go straight into the Galloping Horse Road, and then turn into William Street. There is an office of the Wizard Council. If you find something wrong, you can drink the potion and run over there. On the way, you can also call the Knights of the Capitol Guard to resist you for a while. If it is a wizard apprentice who comes to retaliate against you in person, you will be absolutely safe if you do this. If it is a formal wizard, however, formal wizards are very busy and probably don't have time to come. As he said this, he had already placed the medicine bottle on the table. Ronan put away the medicine bottle and nodded. He had killed Marin anyway. After Paul left, Ronan used a stripping charm on himself. Then he condensed 6 wizard hands, 2 of which put on light blue cloud pattern robe for him, 2 of which tied a blue belt, and 2 of which were tidying up his clothes. His own hands tied his hair into a bun, and inserted an ebony hairpin. He was going to the market of Huan's in Sex Fairyland to see if there were any new things. Snap. He snapped his fingers and his body disappeared in the room. The next moment, he arrived at a secular city on the edge of Huan's in Sex Fairyland. He used the wine-chasing talisman, and his body seemed to turn into a gust of wind, running towards Huan's in Sex Fairyland. When he ran into the fog array, he took out the jade pendant left by the ancestor of the Liu family. The thick fog immediately split to both sides, making way for him. After entering Huan's in Sex Fairyland, he walked straight to the market. Chapter 52 King Mu Sword Technique. As soon as you enter the market in the shanty town, you will be greeted by the breath of life. The roads in the market are not paved with stone slabs, but are all muddy. Stalls are lined up on both sides of the road. They sell everything. There are talismans, elixirs, and magic tools for cultivation, as well as pots, pans, and firewood, rice, oil, and salt needed for life. The stall owners are shouting, and the buyers are bargaining, and all the sounds merge into one. On one side, there are food stalls and food stalls. The smoke from cooking is floating high, and the taste is mouth-watering. Boss, give me a bowl of beef noodles, with more chopped green onions. Ronan sat down at a food stall and shouted. He did not eat lunch in Cakesawan City before coming here, just to taste the craftsmanship here. Soon, a bowl of fragrant beef noodles was brought up by the boss. Ronan was not satisfied with one bowl, so he ordered 2 more bowls. After eating, he paid the bill, loosened his belt slightly, and walked towards the market. This is the E-shaped market. The entrance to the Huan's and Sex Fairyland this time was closest to the Yuzaheo market, so he came here first. Ronan looked at the stalls in the market and saw that the prices of talismans and other items on them had returned to normal. From this point of view, the cultivation world during this period was quite peaceful. Ronan put his hands behind his back, walked around the stalls for a while, and suddenly stopped. He saw a thin book with the words King Mu Sword Art written on the cover. Just looking at the name, you can tell that it is suitable for wood spirit root cultivators to practice. Can I read this book? Ronan asked. Please. The stall owner responded. Ronan immediately picked up the King Mu sword art and opened it. After reading the first few pages, he knew that this sword art was indeed the sword art of wood spirit roots. Its sword moves are all performed with the magic power of wood. The general outline of the sword art said that this sword art has a total of 12 levels. As long as you practice this King Mu sword art, you can use the magic power of wood to release sword energy to hurt the enemy. When you reach the 3rd level, you can learn the Greenwood Sword Light, which is more powerful than the sword energy. When you reach the 6th level, you can learn the Sword Shadow Splitting Art. When you reach the 9th level, you can learn the Protective Sword Formation. When you reach the 12th level, you can learn the 12 Green Spirit Sword Formation. 12 green spirit swords need to be cast to form this sword formation. The pages that Ronan flipped through only briefly introduced this sword art. The pages on how to practice later were in the hands of the stall owner. How much is this sword art? Ronan asked. The stall owner raised 2 fingers. 2 medium grade spirit stones. 2 medium grade spirit stones are equivalent to about 200 low grade spirit stones. Ronan used his spirit to probe into the storage black ring and knew that he only had about 60 low grade spirit stones, which was not enough to buy this book. It's too expensive. Ronan said. Wow, this sword art is worth this spirit stone. It can't be cheaper, said the stall owner. I only have about 50 low grade spirit stones. If you are willing to sell, I will give you all of them, Ronan said. He thought, anyway, this kind of book is handwritten. Even if he sells him 50 spirit stones, he can sell another handwritten book. No. I only sell it for 2 medium grade spirit stones, no less. The stall owner waved his hands and refused to give in. I don't know if the stall owner knows some tricks of some customers pretending to be poor to lower the price. Forget it. I don't have enough money. I won't buy it. Ronan shook his head and walked away immediately. After leaving, he walked slowly, just expecting the stall owner to call him back. But 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps, 4 steps. The stall owner didn't say anything at all. Ronan sighed in his heart and left immediately. He walked around in the other 2 markets and found that the books on spells and moves he saw were not as satisfactory as King Mu sword art. Because this King Mu sword art is a sword art exclusive to wood spirit roots, which can exert the killing effect of wood magic power. Moreover, it has 12 levels and 5 sword moves, which is much richer than other books he saw today. I can only earn spirit stones. So Ronan bought talisman paper in the market. He returned to the shed and started to draw talismans. He drew all 1st level middle grade talismans of master level and below, such as amulets, light body talismans, flame talismans, etc. He did not draw talismans above master level. First, the price was expensive, and it was difficult to find a buyer for a while. Second, it would touch the interests of some talisman masters. He knew that there were some talisman masters in the shed area who specialized in selling master level talismans. He did not want to occupy the market of these talisman masters and cause trouble. Third, after exposing his talisman attainments, it might bring trouble to himself. After all, this is the immortal realm of the return of the true sect, with the immortal cultivation family and the larger return of the true sect. If he knew that he had such a talent for talismans, he might have controlled himself and drawn talismans for them. Although it is a peaceful time now, talismans are not easy to sell as consumables for fighting. But if I lower the price, I should be able to collect 2 medium grade spirit stones in a few days. Ronan thought as he drew 1 1st grade medium grade talisman after another. He reached the perfection of talisman attainment, and even when he was distracted, he would not delay drawing talismans. It took half a day, and by the evening, Ronan had drawn nearly 1,000 1st grade medium grade talismans of the mastery level. He let out a sigh of relief, put all the talismans into his storage bag, and returned to the wizard world with a thought in his mind. Next, Ronan set up a stall in the Yuzaheo market in the Huans Insects Fairyland during the day, and returned to the wizard world at night to practice and sleep. He chose the Yuzaheo market to set up a stall, just to see if his King Mu sword art had been bought by anyone. If someone buys it, who knows, he might be able to buy a copy of the manuscript from that person at a lower price. Whenever someone goes there to ask for the price and then leaves, he will go back to bargain with the stall owner to see if the stall owner is willing to give in. The stall owner just refuses to lower the price. Ronan had no choice but to continue saving spirit stones. After 5 days, he finally saved up 2 medium-grade spirit stones. Ronan took the 2 medium-grade spirit stones and walked to the stall. He exchanged the money with the stall owner and the goods with him. After handing over the goods, the stall owner packed up his stall and was about to leave. Wait a minute. Ronan saw him and immediately stopped him. Dao, you have to wait for me to verify the authenticity of this sword formula before you leave, right? The stall owner was still packing up his stall. As you can see, this book has a total of more than 100 pages. It will take you a long time to finish reading it. I have to go back. I can check the goods quickly. Please wait here, Ronan said. The stall owner ignored him, packed up his stall, and walked out of the market. Is there something fishy about this sword technique? Ronan had a bad feeling in his heart and quickly followed. Chapter 53 Small Botanical Garden and Sword Energy. The stall owner saw Ronan catching up with him and suddenly stepped on his feet. His figure suddenly accelerated and he flew out like a flying monkey. Soon, he ran out of the market. Ronan immediately saw that the stall owner used a light body talisman. Damn it, it seems that this sword technique is really tricky. Ronan cursed in his heart and then used 2 wind chasing talismans on himself and chased after him. Ronan's wind chasing talisman is much more effective than the stall owner's light body talisman. In less than a breath, Ronan caught up with the stall owner. The stall owner saw Ronan catching up and so fast, thinking that he might have offended someone who was much more powerful than himself, and he couldn't help but panic. He hurriedly took out a few more light body talismans from his storage bag, wanting to continue to bless himself and escape from here. But at this time, Ronan took out 2 ice talismans and threw them on him. After screaming several times, the stall owner immediately collapsed to the ground. Frost formed on his body, his whole body was trembling, and his teeth were chattering. Tell me, why did you run? Is there something wrong with this sword technique? Ronan pulled up the collar of the stall owner and questioned. This sword technique is fine. The stall owner trembled and said, what is it? Ronan's eyes suddenly became sharp. The stall owner saw Ronan's murderous eyes and trembled with fear, then said, it's just that the conditions for refining the Kingling sword are a bit harsh. Ronan narrowed his eyes slightly and then threw the stall owner away. He opened the book in his hand and took a look. While reading, he asked AI Hang Meng to analyze the obscure terms in it. Soon, all the information in the book appeared in his mind. The content behind was basically the same as what was described in the general outline. It was the method of practicing the 12 layers, as well as the key points of the 5 moves of King Mu Sword Key, King Mu Sword Light, Sword Shadow Light Splitting Technique, Body Protection Sword Formation, and 12 Kingling Sword Formations. However, there was one thing that could not be reflected in the general outline. That is, only by using the Kingling sword as a magic weapon can the true power of the Sword Shadow Spectral Art, the Body Protection Sword Formation, and the 12 Kingling Sword Formation be brought into play. If other magic weapons are used, the power of the Sword Shadow Spectral Art will be reduced by 20%, the power of the Body Protection Sword Formation will be reduced by 40%, and the power of the 12 Kingling Sword Formation will be reduced by 80%. And if 12 Kingling swords are refined, and the 12 Kingling sword formation is activated, even with the cultivation of the peak of key refining, it can reverse the initial stage of foundation building. Ronan continued to read, and soon saw the method of refining the Kingling sword. To refine the Kingling sword, at least 500 years of Kingling Kian bamboo is required. He has never heard of this kind of spiritual plant. And he studied magic plant science from Awen, and there is no bamboo among the 500 or so plants he knows. It is very likely that there is no bamboo in the wizard world. He knows the scarce resources in the world of cultivation. The harsh conditions mentioned by the stall owner are probably due to this. Where can I get this 500-year-old Kingling Kian bamboo? Ronan looked at the stall owner. The stall owner hesitantly replied, the growth conditions of this Kingling Kian bamboo are very harsh. In places like the shanty town and the mansion area, where the spiritual energy is thin, Kingling Kian bamboo can only grow for 30 years at most. Maybe, on the mountain of the Huanzan sect, Kingling Kian bamboo can grow to 500 years. Maybe? That means there is no way. Then isn't the sword manual you sold me a waste of paper? After Ronan said this, he immediately searched the stall owner's body. Not only did he take back his own spiritual stones, he also took all the spiritual stones of the stall owner. Dao, you can't do this. The stall owner shouted. Although the Kingling sword cannot be refined, you can still learn the 2 moves of King Mu Sword Ki and King Mu Sword Light. Besides, the book says that, if you refine the 12 Kingling swords, you can build your foundation against the enemy. Ronan ignored the stall owner, and walked away without looking back. Ronan strolled around the 3 markets, following the description of the green spirit and green cloud bamboo in the book. Finally, in the A-shaped market, he found a potted green spirit and green cloud bamboo. He called up Hang Meng and analyzed it. Spiritual plant, green spirit and green cloud bamboo year. 15 years old. After going to the wizard world, maybe I can grow it to 500 years old. Ronan immediately bought the potted plant. Holding the potted plant, he left the return to the true sex fairyland. The space in his storage bag and storage ring was a vacuum. If he put the potted plant in, it would probably die after a long time. After leaving the fog array at the edge of the return to the true sex fairyland, he arrived at an uninhabited deep mountain forest. Ronan immediately had an idea and traveled back to the small attic with the green spirit and green cloud bamboo potted plant. As soon as he returned to the wizard world, Ronan's consciousness swept over the green spirit and green cloud bamboo. He immediately felt a flourishing vitality in the green spirit and green cloud bamboo. Since awakening the heart of nature, his sense of plants has become more acute. It seems that the thin spiritual energy in the shanty area has really restricted the growth of this spiritual plant. There is no bamboo in the wizard world. His exotic plant may attract attention. We have to hide it first. Thinking of this, Ronan went out and went to the market to buy 5 flower pots. Then, he took out the elf dagger and cut the Kingling Kian bamboo into 5 sections, each buried in the soil of the flower pot. Then he cast the breeding spell on these 5 sections of Kingling Kian bamboo. The soil of the 5 flower pots bloomed with green light. Ronan's spiritual consciousness enveloped the 5 sections of bamboo and immediately sensed that the 5 sections of bamboo took root in the soil. First plant these 5 sections of bamboo and hide them in the soil. Tomorrow, go to Triumph City to see if there is a larger residence available for rent. That's better than this little attic. Anyone who comes to see me can see me raising these plants at a glance. I haven't started learning the King Mu sword art yet. I only need to refine the Kingling sword. When I practice the 6th level, I can practice the first 6 levels while promoting the growth of Kingling Kian bamboo. The next day, Ronan found a dealer and rented a bungalow in the middle city. The bungalow has 3 bedrooms and a living room, and the rent is 3 Valent gold coins a month. Ronan used one of the rooms as his own small botanical garden. Ordinary plants, magic plants, lifelong trees, and 5 Kingling Kian bamboos were all placed in it. The sunlight shone in from the window on the side and hit the plants, forming a thriving picture. After placing them, Ronan recalled the practice method of the King Mu sword art and began to practice. He sat cross-legged according to the King Mu sword art. Move the power of the ancient wood longevity art through the meridians according to the route described by the sword technique. After about a moment, Ronan felt something in his heart. He summoned Hang Meng and analyzed himself. King Mu sword technique, 10% per layer. Then, he had a thought and traveled to the world of immortal cultivation, deep in the mountains and old forests. He used the power of the ancient wood longevity art, stretched out his hand, and pointed at a tree trunk in front of him, and pointed. Immediately, a sharp sword energy burst out from his fingertips. With a swish, wood chips flew, and a large piece of bark was cut off from the trunk by the sword energy. Chapter 54 Initial Growth Green Liquid. Swish, swish, swish. Ronan kept pointing at the trees in front of him. Sword ki burst out from his fingers. Every time a sword ki passed over a tree, a large piece of sawdust would burst out. The tree trunk fell down and hit the ground, stirring up dust all over the sky. King Mu Sword Art, Level 2, 99%. Level 2 is about to be perfected. Ronan was slightly excited. As long as he practiced to the 3rd level, he would be able to learn the King Mu Sword Light. At that time, the sword key would be able to turn into sword light, and the lethality would be even greater. Ronan released 3 more sword kiss, and 3 trees fell down. Suddenly, he felt something in his heart, and asked Hang Meng to adjust the value. King Mu Sword Art, Level 3, 1%. He used the ancient wood longevity magic power, and condensed it on the sword finger formed by the index and middle fingers of his right hand. Suddenly, a layer of green light enveloped the sword finger. Ronan used his magic power, and pointed the sword forward. A half-zang long green sword light suddenly broke through the air. It swept through the air, and cut down 3 tree trunks in a row. Looking at the cut of the tree trunk, the cut surface was flat and the tree meridians were visible. Ronan looked at the trees piled up in front of him, called up Hang Meng, and analyzed his own status. You have obtained the blessing of the heart of nature. Current status, plant affinity, status effect. When next to plants, strength, spirit, and mana are increased, the increase ratio is determined by the quality and number of plants. Amplification ratio 6%. Amplification range 10 meters. Even though he destroyed the trees crazily, the heart of nature still existed. Moreover, the increase ratio and the increase range did not decrease. Perhaps, because I'm connected to my lifelong tree, the heart of nature also regards me as a tree. My act of destroying trees cannot make the heart of nature disappear from me. After thinking for a while, Ronan collected his thoughts, and began to think about what to do next. Now, his King Mu Sword Art has been practiced to the 3rd level. When he practices to the 6th level, he will learn the sword shadow splitting art. At that time, he will need to refine the Kingling sword as a magic weapon. He thought about it, and felt that it was time to start growing the 5 sections of Kingling Qian bamboo. Thinking of this, Ronan's heart moved, and he returned to the bungalow in Cakesun City. In the small botanical garden in the bungalow, 5 sections of Kingling Qian bamboo with roots were buried in the soil. Bamboo is a foreign object in this world. Although he will not exhibit this small botanical garden to anyone, he does not want to place 5 pots of Kingling Qian bamboo here. Let's open a cellar and put the Kingling Qian bamboo in it. If he wants to open a cellar, of course he can't dig it with his bare hands, Ronan thought. The earth-based witchcraft in the wizard world and the earth magic in the world of cultivation can help him open a cellar. The kingdom of Valant strictly controls the spread of witchcraft. If the people of the kingdom want to obtain witchcraft and do not violate the laws of the kingdom, they must study in various colleges and schools registered in the kingdom, or work in wizard organizations recognized by the kingdom, or be attached to wizard nobles canonized by the royal family. Wild wizards like Ronan can only obtain witchcraft through private transactions. It's a pity that Paul is learning fire witchcraft. Of course, you can also ask Paul to introduce a wizard apprentice who practices earth witchcraft to teach me earth witchcraft privately. But in that case, if Paul makes a request, it is equivalent to giving the other person a handle first. If that person has bad intentions, he will use it to blackmail us. Forget it, I won't call Paul this time. Go to Diagon Alley and take a look at the market in the immortal realm of the return of the true sect. Thinking of this, Ronan went to Diagon Alley. After more than half an hour of strolling, he found nothing. Afterwards, he traveled to the world of immortal cultivation and headed straight to the immortal realm of Huan's insect. After visiting the Bingzaheo market and Yazaheo market in succession, he finally found a secret book of talismans for the earth-moving talisman in Yazaheo market. Ronan bought it immediately, brought it back to the wizard world, memorized it, and began to grind for the earth-moving talisman. The earth-moving talisman is a first-level medium-quality talisman. Because it does not take effect quickly and cannot cause the ground to collapse suddenly, it is almost useless in fighting. This talisman is specially used for cultivators to do civil engineering. Ronan quickly grinded the earth-moving talisman to the proficient level. Afterwards, he used it to secretly dig a cellar in the room where the small botanical garden was located. The excavated soil was taken to the secular world of the immortal cultivation world and dumped. 3 days later, a simple cellar appeared in front of Ronan. The cellar was not large, but it was enough to place 5 pots of Kingling Qian bamboo. He pasted several perfect level illumination talismans around the cellar, which could illuminate for 2 hours. The 5 green spirit green cloud bamboos could also be illuminated. From then on, Ronan refined 18 portions of growth accelerators a day, dividing them equally between his natal immortal tree and the 5 green spirit green cloud bamboos. However, his rapid growth technique was still used on his natal immortal tree. Because the growth of his natal immortal tree was related to his cultivation speed, he had to devote more energy to the growth of his natal immortal tree. In the following days, because he refined more growth accelerators, his proficiency in the growth accelerators also increased rapidly. After a few days, his proficiency in the growth accelerators reached perfection. Ronan went to find Paul and asked him to help him get a new growth potion formula. Paul immediately agreed with a pat on his chest. The potion formula is much easier to make than witchcraft. All you need to do is write down the amount of materials in the refining steps. Unlike witchcraft, if you want to make a witchcraft book to sell, you must at least remember the shape and formula of the witchcraft model first. Ronan only waited for 1 day, and Paul memorized the formula of a growth potion from the Kingdom Wizard Academy. It was a first-class magic potion, the primary green liquid of life. After getting the prescription, Ronan immediately went to the lower city to buy medicinal materials. A total of 50 medicinal materials were bought, all of which were put into the black storage ring and brought back to the bungalow. After everything was ready, he set out the alchemy equipment and began to refine. While refining the medicine, Ronan summoned Hang Meng to analyze the concentration and temperature of the medicine liquid so that he could adjust it at any time. With the help of Hang Meng, he successfully refined a primary green liquid of life in just the first time. The liquid in the crucible showed a dark green color like moss, with bursts of smoke rising, and also a bit of light green and rich vitality. A primary green liquid of life is about 250 milliliters in the previous life. The potion formula that Paul memorized explained that a magic plant could only use 1 portion of primary life green liquid a day. After Ronan refined the potion, he condensed 2 wizard hands, held the crucible, walked to the small botanical garden, and poured it for the life tree. Thank you for the reward from the boss, who finally has time. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 55, The Great Bloodline Wizard. The Limb Replacing Night. The primary life green liquid seeped into the soil and was absorbed by the developed root system of the natal immortal tree. Ronan immediately felt a surge of vitality suddenly flourishing in the natal immortal tree. The natal immortal tree was slowly growing taller. He summoned Hang Meng and analyzed the natal immortal tree. Immediately, fine blue light patterns appeared on the tree. One after another, information appeared in his mind. Spiritual plant, natal immortal tree year. 81. 100 years away from the year, there are still 19 years left. Ronan saw this year and couldn't help looking forward to it. By then, his body will be the greenwood spirit body. The natal immortal tree has grown a lot taller, reaching the roots of his thighs. The pot where the natal immortal tree is planted is also ready to be replaced. After watering the natal immortal tree, Ronan continued to refine the primary growth green liquid. After refining a portion, he took it down to the cellar. He first summoned Hang Meng and analyzed the Kingling Kian bamboo buried in the flower pot. Spiritual plant, Kingling Kian bamboo year. 0.3. Since the Kingling Kian bamboo was cut into several sections by him, the age has dropped significantly. Ronan used his mental power to control the 2 wizard hands and poured the primary growth green liquid in the crucible into the soil of the flower pot. Then, he saw that the age of the Kingling Kian bamboo was growing wildly. Year. 0.3 year. 0.6 year. 1. A bulge appeared in the soil of the flower pot. Then, a section of green bamboo broke through the soil and grew up at a speed visible to the naked eye. After about a moment, this section of bamboo reached the top of the cellar. Spiritual plant, Kingling Kian bamboo year. 20. After drinking a bottle of primary growth green liquid, the age increased by nearly 20 years. Ronan was surprised and happy. If this trend continues, he will be able to harvest 500 years old Kingling Kian bamboo in a month, and thus be able to refine the Kingling sword. In this way, the power of the Guardian will be greatly increased. Afterwards, Ronan continued to refine the initial growth green liquid and poured it into the other 4 flower pots with Kingling Kian bamboo buried in them. Whenever the initial growth green liquid was poured, the Kingling Kian bamboo would break through the soil and rise steadily. He summoned Hung Meng and analyzed the 5 Kingling Kian bamboos. He found that they were all about 20 years old. The difference should be that different parts of the bamboo have different growth potentials. After continuously cultivating so many spiritual plants, Ronan's awakened natural heart also increased his blessing. You have gained the blessing of the natural heart. Current status, plant affinity, status effect. When next to a plant, strength, spirit, and mana are increased. The increase ratio is determined by the quality and number of plants. Increase ratio. 10% amplification range. 20 meters. Ronan looked at the 5 Kingling Kian bamboos in the cellar, which were almost as tall as him, and all reached the top of the cellar. I have to deepen the cellar, he thought to himself when he saw this scene. In the following days, Ronan lived a very fulfilling life. He practiced the ancient wood longevity technique, promoted the growth of spiritual plants, practiced the King Mu sword technique. Sometimes, he would go to Diagon Alley in the immortal realm of the Huans and Sec to see if there were any witchcraft and spells that suited his taste. At noon that day, he practiced the ancient wood longevity technique and breathed in and out for a few rounds. Feeling hungry, he stopped practicing and went out for lunch. Ronan walked on the street while thinking about what to eat for lunch. As he walked, he arrived in the lower city. He smelled the sweet smell of pie that he had once made people salivate, so he walked in. After ordering 2 honey beef pies and a large glass of blackberry wine, he was about to eat heartily when his eyes suddenly fixed. A pair of eyes stared straight at the 4 people who walked into the tavern. Ronan recognized one of the 4 people. He was a night squire in his father's territory. He seemed to be called Jack. Jack was a young man in his 20s, a little unkempt, with slightly long golden curly hair hanging down on both sides, and golden whiskers on both cheeks. He wore a grey linen shirt and a leather vest, and a short sword on his waist. After the night squire walked in, he glanced at the tavern and soon saw Ronan. The other 3 people also froze when they saw Ronan. Ronan immediately knew that these 3 people were probably his father's people. It's just that he had never met these 3 people before. As the second son of Baron Lawrence, he often appeared with his father in various public occasions. Those soldiers should recognize him. Second young Master Lawrence. The 4 people came over together and saluted Ronan. Why are you here? Ronan asked. The 4 soldiers looked at each other for a while, and then Jack smiled bitterly and said, there are too many people here, so it's not convenient to tell. Ronan did not continue to ask about this question, but asked again, who led you here? It was young Master Lawrence. Jack said, he also entered Triumph City and said he was looking for you. Ronan immediately stood up and took out a Valiant gold coin and put it on the table. I'll treat you to food and drinks here. Then he left. The 4 people were suddenly given money to treat them, so they were naturally happy and thanked Ronan. Ronan walked on the street, thinking in his heart. He did not write down the change of address in his family letter and told his family members. In fact, he did not expect that in a short period of time, his family members would cross the distance of most of the kingdom and come here from Redwood territory. Ronan hurriedly walked back to the middle city. When he saw his small attic, he saw a strong and tall man knocking on the door of the small attic. Ronan hurriedly walked up and shouted, brother. The man trembled when he heard it and immediately turned around and looked at Ronan. This man also had black hair and black pupils, but he had beards on his cheeks, chin, and lips, which made him look very rough. Ronan. Leon Lawrence shouted, and then hurried down the stairs and hugged Ronan. Although Ronan came from a time travel, he had been with his brother for several months, and could feel the love of Leon Lawrence for him. Being hugged tightly at this time, he couldn't help but feel a sense of intimacy in his heart. Brother, why did you come here? Ronan asked. Leon let go of Ronan. It's not convenient to talk here. Let's go inside and talk. As he said that, he was about to go up the stairs again. Ronan said, I moved and took Leon to the bungalow. Lian looked at the bungalow. Although it was not luxurious, it was much larger than the small attic. In the Triumph City, where every inch of land is worth a lot of money, it should not be cheap. It seems that your wizard training is progressing well, Lian said. After hearing this, Ronan knew that his family still didn't know about his lie. Yes, brother, you haven't told me yet. Why are you here? Ronan asked. This is also related to your wizards. Lian said, bloodline wizard, I guess you know it too? Ronan nodded. The bloodline wizard Sophia Oran is notorious in the wizard world of the Kingdom of Valant. Sophia Oran was originally a wizard whose strength was second only to the legendary wizard Dolifer Augustus. Because he had carried out several bloody and dangerous human body transformations, he was not tolerated by the royal family. After failing to fight against the royal family, he fled to the Orc Empire. After arriving in the Orc Empire, he used his bloodline witchcraft to create many fighting orc species, making the Orc Empire's combat power unprecedentedly strong. In particular, he used blood and flesh transformation witchcraft to create the Limri Attachment Knight, which has a combat power that makes border soldiers terrified. Seeing Ronan nod, Lian said, under Sophia Loren's instigation, the orcs invaded the kingdom again, and the royal family recruited soldiers from all over. Our territory, Redwood Territory, also needs to send 500 soldiers to participate in the war. Chapter 56 Would Combat Witchcraft. After a quick reunion with Ronan, Lian was about to leave. He had to take the soldiers of the territory and catch up with the main force. Before Lian left, Ronan told him not to fight too hard after reaching the border and to pretend to be dead if possible. But it was unknown whether Lian listened to him. Ronan sent Lian several miles outside the city and then waved goodbye. He watched Lian walk into the 500-man team of the Redwood Territory, and this 500-man team then joined the soldiers of other territories. The long team walked on the grass slope, under the blue sky, heading north. I hope Lian can return safely. Ronan stood in the distance, watching Lian's team gradually go away, then sighed and walked back into the city. This afternoon, Ronan went to Awen's bungalow. Whenever he entered Awen's bungalow, his natural heart suddenly became active. The increase in his power has exceeded the increase in his power next to his natal immortal tree. This is because there are many precious magic plants in Awen's bungalow. The more precious the magic plant is, and the older it is, the greater the increase in the heart of nature will be. Now he is looking for Awen, not just to learn magic plant science. Moreover, with the assistance of AI Hangmeng, he has learned 90% of Awen's knowledge of magic plant science. The rest still depends on practice. This time he came to Awen to learn wood-based combat witchcraft from Awen. Before awakening the heart of nature, he asked Awen to learn the wood-based combat witchcraft of the Druid school. But Awen refused to teach no matter what. Even if Ronan tempted with a large amount of money, Awen's tone did not loosen at all. After awakening the heart of nature, Ronan tempted with some money again, and Awen's tone loosened. This afternoon is the day he and Awen agreed to learn witchcraft. Ronan put 20 Valant gold coins in a small red bag and handed it to Awen. Awen weighed it and put it into her storage bracelet. Then, she moved a sand table in the corner to the center of the small hall. In her hand, she held a branch. Today, I will teach you 3 basic wood-based combat magic for Druid School Wizard apprentices. They are first level intermediate magic, entanglement. First level intermediate magic, wood armor. First level superior magic, healing. The basic attack logic is to trap the enemy with entanglement first, and then kill the enemy with wood armor. At this point, Awen performed the entanglement. Her slender hands grabbed a flower pot without magic plants. Suddenly, a large group of vines emerged from the soil of the flower pot and entangled towards a place. Then, wood bark suddenly condensed on the skin of her left hand. Soon, the wood bark on the back of her hand extended forward and condensed into a sharp wooden blade. Awen waved her left hand, and the wooden blade swept across the vines summoned by the entanglement spell. Several vines were cut off and fell to the ground. Immediately, she shook her left hand slightly, and the wood bark on it turned into a cloud of mist and dissipated, revealing her smooth skin. The logic of defense is to use wood armor to defend, and if you are injured, use healing to heal. You have learned the breeding spell well, and it should not be difficult to learn the entanglement spell. After all, its spells and witchcraft models are relatively similar. wood armor and healing are a kind of defensive witchcraft and a kind of healing witchcraft. You have not been exposed to them before, so it is much more difficult to learn them. After that, Alan first taught Ronan the spell of the entanglement spell. Then, while explaining, she used branches to write the spell and draw the witchcraft model on the sand table. With the help of AI Hangmeng, Ronan quickly memorized the spell, and witchcraft model of the entanglement spell. What Awen said was indeed good. It was 70% similar to the spells and witchcraft models of the breeding technique. As long as the breeding technique is learned well, the entanglement technique will be learned much faster. Next, Awen taught the spells, techniques, and witchcraft models of the wood armor technique. She was afraid that Ronan would not be able to understand it for a while, so she explained it in detail and taught it slowly. With a pair of big brown eyes, she often looked at Ronan, trying to see where Ronan would have questions. Ronan had AI Hangmeng, and he quickly memorized the spells. He also memorized and understood the techniques and witchcraft models thoroughly in a very short time. But his amazing learning ability could not be exposed, so he pretended to study very seriously. When Awen looked at him, he asked a few questions on the techniques. Awen listened and nodded. She remembered that, when she was studying, she also had questions about these places, so she patiently explained them to Ronan. Let's stop here today. Witchcraft is not easy to learn. You can come here in the next few days. After teaching for more than 3 hours, Awen said. Ronan wished that she could teach the spells, techniques, and witchcraft models of healing magic as well. It was a pity that Awen was a defender of the tradition of the Druid sect. She only taught people witchcraft orally and never left any trace on paper. However, it was also because Awen was a defender of the tradition of the Druid sect that she was willing to teach him witchcraft after he awakened the heart of nature. According to the laws of the kingdom, he was not recognized by the Druid school's great wizard Malfury, nor by the wizard council. Awen taught him witchcraft privately, and both of them violated the law. Okay, Ms. Drell, see you tomorrow. Ronan said goodbye and walked towards the door. Wait. Awen suddenly stopped Ronan. When you go out, you must not show this witchcraft to others. If you are reported, you can pay a high fine. But I don't have that much gold coins. I can only serve. Although Awen is close to being a formal wizard, she lives a very tight life. After all, wizard training is very expensive. I can't do it, Ronan said, then turned around and pushed the door open. In the next few days, Ronan went to Awen's small bungalow every day, pretending to learn witchcraft. At night, Ronan traveled to the world of immortal cultivation and practiced 3 kinds of witchcraft in the deserted woods. While practicing, he summoned Hangmeng and analyzed himself. Lifespan: 212 strength, 9.3 spirit, 21 mana, 12 skills, ancient wood longevity skill, 10th level 2%, greenwood sword skill, 3rd level 1%, Yanshen skill, entry level 5%, talisman, flying sword talisman, grandmaster 81%, golden armor talisman, master 35%, wine chasing talisman, master 31%, expand, witchcraft, entanglement, proficient 2%, wood armor, proficient 12%, healing, proficient 1%, expand. Knowledge, magic plant science, master 23%, alchemy, proficient 68%, expand, potion, growth green liquid, proficient 36%, expand, cultivation realm, 7th level of key refining wizard level, 3rd level wizard apprentice. Spiritual plant, natal longevity tree year 82 as Awen said, because he learned the breeding technique well. His progress in practicing the entanglement technique was much faster. As long as the sorcery reaches the expert level, one can build a sorcery model in his mind. Now, the sorcery models of the 3 wood-based combat sorcery have been built in his mind. As long as he uses his mana, he can cast these 3 sorcery instantly. Chapter 57 The Ancient Tree's Longevity Magic Power Blesses Wood Witchcraft. It was also night in the world of immortal cultivation. There was no moon in the sky, only a few sparse stars. It was almost pitch black in the deep mountains and old forests. But Ronan's body, nourished by the spiritual energy of heaven and earth fed back by his natal immortal tree, was much stronger than that of ordinary people. With his eyesight, he could still see things even with only a little starlight. Ronan used the immortal power of the ancient tree and injected it into the witchcraft model of entanglement. At the same time, he stretched out his hand and grabbed forward. Swish! The soil on the forest ground in front of him bulged, and then several vines burst out from the soil and entangled towards the tree. Soon, these vines entangled the tree. As he continued to inject magic power, the power of the vines became stronger and stronger. The bark was twisted by the vines and soon sank. Then, Ronan used his magic power again. Crack. When the sound fell, the trunk of the tree was actually twisted by Ronan's entanglement, and it fell to one side. Ronan continued to manipulate the vines to wrap around the fallen tree trunk. Then, he manipulated the vines and waved the tree trunk. The trunk passed by, pulling the air in the forest, making a roaring sound. After waving a few times, Ronan manipulated the vines to gently put the trunk down. According to what Aben said, the entanglement spell at this time should not have such great power. Ronan summoned Hangmeng and analyzed his status. You have obtained the blessing of the heart of nature. Current status, plant affinity. Status effect, when next to plants, strength, spirit, and mana are increased, the increase ratio is determined by the quality and number of plants. Amplification ratio. 12%, amplification range. 23 meters. Even if he counted the 12% increase from the heart of nature, the entanglement spell should not have such a strong power. Now his entanglement spell can cut off a tree trunk the size of a wash basin and lift it up and wave it. This is at least twice as powerful as the entanglement spell described by Awen. Could it be that the ancient wood's immortality magic has a bonus on wood-related witchcraft and spells? Thinking of this, Ronan decided to verify it. He had only tried the power of the entanglement technique, but had not tried the power of the wood armor technique. The power of the wood armor technique is reflected in the hardness of the wood armor. He used the ancient wood's immortality magic power and injected it into the witchcraft model of the wood armor technique. A layer of wood armor was immediately covered on his right hand. On the back of his hand, under his will, a wooden thorn as thick as a finger extended. This wooden thorn extended to a length of 1 meter. Then, he suddenly stabbed at a tree trunk with a diameter of a basin. Swish! The wooden thorn as thick as a finger pierced from one side of the tree trunk and came out from the other side. This hardness is also much greater than what Awen said. According to Awen, if you are a little more proficient in the wood armor technique, you must at least condense the wooden thorn into the size of a sword before you can pierce a tree trunk without breaking it. Ronan put away his magic power, and the wooden armor on his hand, without the support of magic power, turned into brown mist and dissipated. The hole in the tree trunk that he pierced was sap flowing out. Ronan immediately used his magic power and injected the witchcraft model of healing. He aimed his hands at the tree hole he pierced, and immediately a light bloomed in the tree hole, then spread and soon filled the tree hole. The sap stopped flowing, and the tree hole gradually shrank visibly. After about 5 minutes, the tree hole was completely full, and only a small mark was left on the tree trunk. The healing speed of the healing art is also faster than what Aben said. With the blessing of the ancient wood's longevity magic, the healing art has also improved. But I'm more concerned about the healing effect of the animal's wounds. After all, the healing art is for himself. Thinking of this, Ronan immediately performed the wooden armor art, condensed a sharp thorn, and was about to scratch his skin. Swish! The spikes cut through the air and stopped suddenly when they were about to touch the skin of his left hand. He couldn't do it. He was afraid of the pain. So Ronan released his spiritual sense and searched for animals in the forest, intending to try it with animals. He continued to go deeper into the forest. After about 10 minutes, his spiritual sense swept to a tiger's den. In the tiger's den, there was a tiger bigger than a human, sleeping soundly. As if it smelled the scent of a human, the tiger immediately woke up with a start. Roar. The tiger suddenly jumped out of the tiger's den like a gust of wind. When it saw Ronan, its eyes lit up. This was a real white-browed tiger with hanging eyes. Ronan had only seen those sickly tigers in the zoo in his previous life. This was the first time he had seen such a fierce one. Roar. The tiger roared again, like a dark cloud, rushing towards Ronan. Ronan grabbed the void with his right hand. Suddenly, several vines burst out from the forest, twisting and turning, and entangled the tiger in the air. The tiger was startled and struggled violently, but could not get free. Ronan curled his lips slightly, condensed a wooden thorn, and scratched the tiger's belly. The tiger roared wildly, waving its foreclaws continuously. A blood mark as thick as a thumb appeared on the tiger's belly. Blood flowed out from it. Ronan immediately performed a healing spell. Soon, the wound stopped bleeding. After 5 minutes, the wound healed. The tiger felt pain in the wound, but gradually the wound healed. Just as he was puzzled, the roar gradually subsided, and he looked at Ronan. Ronan condensed a wooden thorn as thick as a finger again, and stabbed the tiger's belly. The tiger roared again, waving its foreclaws more violently. Then, Ronan performed a healing spell on the blood hole. This time, because the wound was more serious, it took almost a minute to stop the bleeding completely. It took almost half an hour to heal completely. At this time, Ronan had a rough idea of the healing effect of the healing technique. I wonder if the healing technique at this time can cure the fatal injury? Thinking of this, Ronan used the wood armor technique to condense a wooden short sword in the tiger's doubtful and fearful eyes and slash the tiger's belly. A 20 centimeter long cut was made, and the tiger's internal organs and intestines flowed out. The tiger let out a scream that resounded through the jungle. Ronan stuffed the tiger's internal organs and intestines into it and performed the healing technique. A faint green light wrapped the 20 centimeter long cut and healed the wound. 2 hours later, Ronan summoned Hang Meng and analyzed the tiger. The next moment, Hang Meng transmitted a stream of information to him. The tiger had completely lost its vital signs. So Ronan knew that the current healing technique was powerless for such a fatal injury. Then, Ronan collected the tiger's blood and drew some talismans. Then, he took out the elven dagger and peeled off the tiger's skin. He planned to sell it at the secular market tomorrow, which should be able to exchange for some silver. Chapter 58, The Tree of Immortality. The dawn was just breaking, and the capital of the kingdom, Triumph City, gradually became active. Ronan also got up from the bed. After a night's sleep, he was refreshed. Moreover, the life tree fed back the refined spiritual energy of heaven and earth day and night. While he slept well, his cultivation was also improving. After slapping himself with a cleaning talisman, Ronan got out of bed, put on straw sandals, and walked towards his small botanical garden. In order to cope with the growing life tree, Ronan has been buying more vigorous and older magic plants and placing them around the life tree. Magic plants are very expensive, but fortunately Ronan has the skill of drawing talismans. After earning spirit stones in the immortal realm of Huan's insect and exchanging them for gold bars, he returned here and exchanged them for valiant gold coins to buy magic plants. Sandwiched among nearly 10 magic plants, the life tree does not look so conspicuous. Now, Ronan's small botanical garden is already lush and green. When he looked at the life tree, his eyes suddenly condensed. There was a little green bud on the natal immortal tree. This green bud was different from what he had seen before. Could it be a flower bud? Ronan immediately called up Hang Meng and gave the command to analyze the green bud. The next moment, Hang Meng responded that it was indeed a flower bud. I wonder what pleasant changes will happen after the natal immortal tree blooms. Ronan was looking forward to it. His natal immortal tree was transformed from the elf treasure tree. If he wanted to speculate what would happen after his natal immortal tree bloomed, he might have to understand what changes would happen after the elf treasure tree bloomed. However, he knew very little about the elf treasure tree. After all, the elves had long since declined. When the kingdom of Valant talked about elves, they were all about those slim and beautiful elf slave girls. Few people talked about other things about the elves. I wonder how much Awen knows about the elf treasure tree. Thinking of this, Ronan decided to visit Awen. He took off his pajamas, put on a tunic, tied his cape, fastened it with a brooch, and walked out. First he went to a restaurant and had pigeon meat pie and honey milk for breakfast. After the meal, he went to the market to buy some cherries and ate them while walking. While eating, he walked to Awen's bungalow. He knocked on Awen's wooden door. After waiting for a few seconds, no one responded. He knocked again, but still no one responded. Not at home. Ronan immediately released his spiritual sense and scanned towards Awen's bungalow. He immediately sensed that there was a single bed in a small room in the bungalow, and a woman was sleeping on it. After a careful scan of his spiritual sense, it was undoubtedly Awen. So you haven't gotten up yet. How can you sleep at this time? Bang bang bang. Ronan used all his strength and knocked on the door. Then, his sense sensed that Awen on the bed, after pupa a few times, fell asleep again. Bang 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 bang. Ronan knocked on the door even louder. Finally, Awen on the bed, after pupa a few more times, lifted the quilt and sat up. After cursing a few words, she put on a long dress, got off the bed, and walked out of the bedroom barefoot. "Excuse me, who is this?" Awen asked politely. "It's me, Ronan Lawrence." Ronan replied. Ronan sensed that Awen's little hands were clenched, her lips moved, and after cursing a few words in a low voice, she cast a spell. A magic plant stretched out its roots and opened the door for Ronan. Suddenly, a large piece of sunlight shone in and hit Awen. Awen's long brown hair was messy and fluffy, and she exuded a sense of laziness all over her body. The linen dress she was wearing slid slightly to the left, revealing a little of her collarbone and her smooth wheat-colored left shoulder. "Ronan, why are you here so early?" Awen patted her mouth with her slender hands and yawned. Since becoming more and more familiar with Ronan, Awen has put away the noble etiquette of Triumph City. She also changed from addressing Ronan as Mr. Lawrence to calling him by his name. "I want to ask you about the 3 wood-attributed combat magics," Ronan said. He certainly couldn't ask about the elf tree right away, which would arouse Awen's suspicion. "Okay, please sit down." After all, she was paid, so Awen did not refuse. After performing the magic and closing the door, she asked Ronan to sit down. Then, she asked Ronan to wait for a while, went into the bathroom to wash up, tidy up her hair and clothes, and then came out. After Awen sat down, Ronan asked her a few questions about magic. Awen answered in detail, and then Ronan gradually changed the topic and led to the magic plants in Awen's bungalow. Among Awen's magic plants, there were also a few plants with flowers in full bloom. After talking about Awen's magic plant flowers for a while, Ronan asked, "The legendary magic plant, the elf tree, will bloom and bear fruit?" "The elf tree blooms, but it doesn't bear fruit," Awen said. "Then what is the use of the elf tree blooming?" Ronan continued to ask questions. "After the elf tree blooms, it will produce seeds. After planting the seeds, you can get the elf tree's saplings. According to legend, when the elves were still the overlords of the continent, their saplings were almost all over the continent. Each sapling can release magic power and provide power for the operation of the formation in the elf settlement. Alas. At this point, Awen sighed. The elf tree is really a magical plant. Over the years, many wizards from the druid school and other schools have studied how to use the roots of the elf tree to grow an elf tree. But there is still no progress. Ronan listened to Awen's words and drank a glass of wine. His eyes did not change. "So it's a sapling?" He couldn't help but look forward to it. If there is really a sapling, then after he plants another tree, the 2 trees will feed back the refined spiritual energy of heaven and earth to him together. In this way, the cultivation of his spiritual body will be accelerated. After this period of practice, he found that the cultivation of the acquired spiritual body was actually the feedback of the refined spiritual energy of heaven and earth by the natal immortal tree to continuously change his physique. The ancient wood longevity technique said that the greenwood spiritual body can be formed in 100 years, the yewood dharma body can be formed in 1,000 years, and the eternal evergreen body can be formed in 10,000 years. It should be aimed at the environment of heaven and earth when the ancient wood longevity technique was created. In the current environment of the immortal world, the spiritual energy is not rich enough. It is a problem whether the greenwood spiritual body can be cultivated after planting trees for 100 years. Afterwards, Ronan talked about some elves with Awen. Awen said that some knowledge in the druid sect was also learned from the elves. In the druid sect period, the druids and the elves were relatively friendly. However, after entering the wizard era, people in the druid school rarely communicated with the elves. Because now, the invasion and persecution of the elves by wizards and knights are more serious than before. After all, in the era when gods appeared, many people thought that elves were the people of gods, and they were hesitant to persecute elves. Wizards, on the other hand, did not believe in gods, but only in truth and knowledge. In the eyes of wizards, gods were just powerful humans or some kind of existence. As long as they learned enough knowledge, they could kill gods. Chapter 59 500 Years of Kindling Kian Bamboo. Ronan got the answer he wanted, and after asking a few more questions, he said goodbye to Awen. After leaving Awen's small bungalow, Ronan scanned with his spiritual sense. After sensing that Awen had taken off her long jumpsuit, he got back into the quilt. After returning to his bungalow, Ronan began to refine the green liquid of growth. He changed to a larger crucible. With just one refinement, he could refine 6 portions, 1 for his natal longevity tree and 5 kindling Kian bamboos. He condensed 10 wizard hands to work with him. After about an hour, 6 portions of green liquid of growth were refined. Ronan took the crucible, summoned Hang Meng, and poured portions of green liquid of growth on his natal longevity tree and 5 kindling Kian bamboos. While pouring the green liquid of growth, he summoned Hang Meng to analyze these spiritual plants. Spiritual plant, life tree year. 83 spiritual plant, green spirit bamboo year. 42 spiritual plant, green spirit bamboo year. 40. Green spirit bamboo has grown taller than a human. He dug the cellar much deeper, into a cylindrical shape. The light charm was pasted on the cellar wall, emitting light, illuminating the 5 green spirit bamboos. The 5 green spirit bamboos were crowded in the cellar, tightly against the top of the cellar. After pouring the green liquid for growth, Ronan left the cellar and covered the wooden boards and stone slabs. After manipulating the wizard's hand and packing up the tools for refining medicine, he returned to the small botanical garden and performed the rapid growth technique on the life tree. Mana was injected into the witchcraft model, and a green light column appeared out of thin air and landed on the life tree. Ronan used his mental power to move the magic of the rapid growth technique to the flower bud of the natal immortal tree. He wanted to see if the flower bud would really produce a tree seed after it bloomed. 10 days passed before he knew it. 3 days ago, the flower bud bloomed. The flower was white, emitting a faint golden light, with a total of 12 petals, and looked very holy. Ronan performed the rapid growth technique and directed the magic of the rapid growth technique to the flower. After more than an hour, the flower suddenly lit up. Then, a little golden light was seen floating down from the stamen. Ronan immediately stopped performing witchcraft, and caught the golden light with his hand. The golden light was a particle of matter, and there was a warmth when it touched. Moreover, Ronan could feel connected to this particle of matter without using his spiritual sense, and clearly felt that there was a vitality in it. Ronan could only have such a clear feeling with the natal immortal tree. Now, he could easily feel the vitality of this object. It seemed that this object was the seed of the immortal tree. Ronan first buried the seed of the immortal tree in the big pot of the immortal tree. Then, he went out and bought a small flower pot and buried the seed in it. Then, he used the rapid growth technique on the tree. A green light appeared out of thin air, drilled into the soil, and hit the tree. Ronan felt that the vitality of the tree was becoming more and more vigorous. Gradually, the embryonic root of the tree broke out and extended in the soil. Ronan called Hang Meng to analyze it. Spiritual plant, immortal tree year. 0.1. According to Hang Meng's analysis, the structure of this tree is the same as that of the immortal tree. It seems that this tree is the subtree of the immortal tree. Although the appearance of the elf treasure tree, after being sacrificed and refined into the immortal tree is very different from the legendary elf treasure tree, but the natal immortal tree still retains the characteristics of the elf treasure tree. After Ronan pondered for a while, he carefully sensed the subtree of the natal immortal tree. Although it was just a embryo, it was also doing its best to absorb and refine the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Ronan could sense that a tiny amount of mana was being generated in his dinshin. The two trees refined the spiritual energy of heaven and earth together, and the cultivation of the acquired spiritual body would be faster. Ronan was delighted, and temporarily stopped the rapid growth technique. He refined a portion of growth green liquid, and poured it on the subtree. It is necessary to refine multiple portions of growth green liquid every day, and the proficiency of growth green liquid will increase much faster. Growth green liquid, mastery 56%. The growth green liquid that has reached the mastery level has a much better effect on the growth of spiritual plants. After 5 days, after Ronan watered the Kingling Kian bamboo with the growth green liquid, he called up Hang Meng and analyzed it. Suddenly, a glimmer of light flashed in his eyes. Spiritual plant, green spirit emerald cloud bamboo year 501. One of the green spirit emerald cloud bamboos that grew relatively well has exceeded 500 years of age. This means that he can use this green spirit emerald cloud bamboo to refine the green spirit sword in the greenwood sword art. The 500-year-old green spirit emerald cloud bamboo is only the minimum threshold for refining the green spirit sword. The older the green spirit emerald cloud bamboo is, the more powerful the green spirit sword will be. Ronan thought for a while and made a decision. Anyway, at present, he has 5 green spirit emerald cloud bamboos. He can use this one to try to refine the green spirit sword first. He can continue to grow the other green spirit emerald cloud bamboos and refine them when they are older. In this way, on the one hand, he can be more proficient in refining the green spirit sword the second time than the first time. On the other hand, he can compare the power of the green spirit sword after refining the green spirit emerald cloud bamboos of different years. Before preparing to sacrifice and refine, Ronan suddenly thought of something. In the wizard world, the art of refining equipment is also well developed. When he chatted with Paul, he learned that there was an alchemy department in the wizard system. The wizards of this department delved into the refining of magic tools, weapons and other tools. Thinking about how to refine magic tools and weapons, they would have greater power. Combining alchemy knowledge with the method of refining the Kingling sword, perhaps the Kingling sword refined by the sacrifice will be more powerful. Ronan thought of this and immediately went to find Paul. He first went to the wild beer bar, and after entering, he took a look and didn't find Paul, so he went to Paul's residence. Before he arrived, he scanned with his spiritual sense and found that Paul was lying on the sand table again, writing and drawing with branches and calculating witchcraft formulas. After Ronan knocked on Paul's door, Paul immediately came back to his senses from the sand table. "Who? I'm Ronan." After Paul opened the door, Ronan saw Paul's unwashed hair, messy like a bird's nest, and a pair of red eyes with eye mucus in the corners of his eyes. "Hey, Ronan, long time no see," Paul said. Ronan got straight to the point and said, "I want to learn about alchemy. What channels do I have?" After hearing this, Paul patted his chest and said, "You've asked the right person. You know, I specialize in fire, and I'm willing to help others. Some wizard apprentices who practice gold will ask me for help. Recently, I have participated in the refining of some wizard tools and have a deep understanding of alchemy knowledge." Chapter 60 Basic Transformation Potion. Ronan immediately asked Paul to tell him about alchemy, hoping to find a way to strengthen the Kingling sword. After Paul talked for a while, Ronan knew that there were roughly 2 ways to use alchemy to strengthen weapons and magic tools. One is to integrate magic ore. Magic ore is a ore that can conduct magic in the wizard world. For example, the obsidian building material of the wizard tower of the legendary wizard Dulafer Augustus is a kind of magic ore. This kind of stone has very little resistance to the conduction of magic and can be engraved with many magic patterns and carry many witchcraft formations. Another method is to carve magic patterns. According to what Paul said, magic patterns are similar to the talismans in the world of cultivation, and both can carry extraordinary power between heaven and earth. There are also several major categories of magic patterns, some studied by wizards, and some left by the elves, that is, elf runes. Paul talked about these superficial knowledge incessantly, and his saliva flew everywhere. When Ronan asked him how to do it specifically, Paul was speechless. He just followed the instructions of other alchemy apprentices and used fire magic to help when they integrated the magic ore. Paul didn't know much about how to integrate the magic ore and carve magic patterns. He learned elven runes for a while, but later found that his fire magic progressed faster, so he focused on practicing fire magic. Ronan has known Paul for a long time. He knew that this kid liked to brag. When Paul said that he had a deep understanding of alchemy, Ronan didn't have much expectation in his heart. "Is there any way for me to learn about alchemy?" Ronan asked immediately. Paul reached into his bird's nest-like mess of hair and scratched it. The library in the academy does have books on alchemy, but they cannot be recorded or taken out, and outsiders are not allowed to enter the library. Alas, the alchemy formulas and magic patterns are difficult to understand. If I want to memorize them, I don't need to practice other witchcraft. Paul murmured to Ronan, and suddenly a gleam of light flashed in his eyes. If you can enter the library, it will be fine. Do you have a way? Ronan's eyes also lit up. If he could enter the library of the Kingdom Wizard Academy and acquire knowledge, it would be much easier. I thought of one, but it's not easy to realize it. Paul said, that is to use the transformation potion, to change into my appearance, and then use my academy badge to enter the library. Can you get the formula of the transformation potion? Ronan's eyes lit up. Transformation potion is a banned drug in the Kingdom of Valant. Because after taking the transformation potion, the body and breath of the person who takes it are exactly the same as the person being impersonated. In the history of the Kingdom of Valant, there were several bloody cases committed by vicious black wizards using transfiguration potions. Therefore, the kingdom issued a decree prohibiting the refining of transfiguration potions. In addition, the royal family sent spies to find out which family or school had the formula of the transfiguration potion. If there was any, they would be confiscated and burned. Nowadays, the transfiguration potion is almost extinct in the kingdom. Paul glanced at Ronan and whispered, I do know someone whose family has the formula of the primary transfiguration potion passed down. He recently wanted this primary transfiguration potion. But it is difficult to refine the primary transfiguration potion. Even if he has the formula, he can't refine it himself. He knows that I have a wide network of contacts, so he wants me to find him a good alchemist to help him refine the primary transfiguration potion. I can try to get the formula for you, but if you refine it, you have to give him a copy. Okay. Ronan nodded. So Paul packed up, got dressed, and went out. After Paul left, Ronan sat down on the sofa in Paul's living room. He poured a glass of wine and drank it while thinking. After he got the formula, should he really give that person a copy of the primary transfiguration potion he made? After all, he didn't know how that person used the primary transfiguration potion. If that person committed a crime with the primary transfiguration potion, he would be implicated. More than an hour later, Paul came back. He took out a piece of parchment and handed it to Ronan. Ronan glanced at it. There were crooked handwriting on the parchment, which recorded a potion formula. The ink marks were still fresh. It should have been copied by that person not long ago. Take a look. If you can make it, give him a copy. Paul said. Ronan took the parchment and asked, do you know what he wants to do with the primary transfiguration potion? Paul listened and shook his head. Ronan said, even if I can refine it, I don't plan to give it to him. If he uses the primary transformation potion to commit a crime, we will be in danger. Paul said, but he gave the formula, but he can't get the primary transformation potion. In anger, he may report me to the Wizard Council. Ronan said, what about his family? Paul said, his family has a third-level wizard apprentice, which is considered an upper-class noble in the southwestern province. That's good. His family is so big. Ronan said, if the matter of the primary transformation potion is exposed, he will implicate his family and he will suffer greater losses. You remind him of this. As long as he is still rational, he will not report to the Wizard Council. However, Ronan thought for a moment, and then said, just say that the person you found can't refine the primary transformation potion for a while. But, there is progress every day, and I believe that soon, the primary transformation potion can be refined. Just keep him hanging like this. When he really threatens you with reporting, you explain the pros and cons to him. Okay. Paul agreed. In terms of closeness, Ronan is closer to him, so he naturally prefers Ronan. Afterwards, Ronan left Paul's residence to collect materials for refining the primary transformation potion. Although he just took a few glances, but with the help of AI Hangmeng, the information on the parchment has been fully imprinted in his mind. The primary transformation potion is not only difficult to refine, but also requires very demanding materials. He summoned Hangmeng and called out the main materials for refining the primary transformation potion: male and female lassoings, killer leeches, liquid grass picked on a moonlit night, two-eared grass picked at dawn, horns of 2 horned beasts ground into powder, snakeskin fragments of man-faced tree snakes. Lassoings and killer leeches are both things in the forest, and he has heard about them from Awen. Lassoings are usually in the Warcraft forest. Killer leeches can be found in the forest by the sea and Triumph City. He has to collect both of these things. The other 4 materials were not cheap. Of course, for him, who was rich, the last 4 materials were the easiest. Chapter 61 Kingdom Wizard Academy. The next afternoon, Ronan returned to his bungalow. He sat down on a chair next to the dining table, slumped down, poured himself a glass of wine, and drank it. After spending most of the day, he finally collected all the main materials for refining the primary transformation potion. He personally went to the Guld Forest and the coastal forest outside the Triumph City to catch the lassoings and killer leeches. His mental power was not bad. He opened his spiritual sense and slapped the light body talisman, and soon found the 2 objects. He caught a lot, put them in a wooden barrel, and brought them back. After he returned to the Triumph City, he went to Tom's pharmacy and the butcher shop in Tashan that sold magic beast materials. He bought the liquid grass picked on the moonlit night, the 2-eared grass picked at dawn, the horns of the 2-horned beast, and the snake skin of the man-faced tree snake. It cost him a total of 7,000 gold coins. The price was almost as much as a storage ring. After the materials were complete, Ronan condensed 10 wizard hands and began to refine the potion. Another room in the bungalow is where Ronan makes medicine. Inside is a large table with crucibles, grinding mortars, extraction bottles and other medicine making utensils on it. The primary transformation potion is a 2nd level potion. Ronan has never made a 2nd level potion. The refining of a 2nd level potion is extremely difficult for a wizard apprentice. First, the 2nd level potion involves a technique that is difficult for wizard apprentices to understand. Second, the 2nd level potion controls the temperature and timing of the potion, which is also difficult for wizard apprentices to grasp. Third, the 2nd level potion has a lot of steps, and it is difficult for wizard apprentices to concentrate for a long time with their mental strength. But this is not a problem for Ronan. Hang Meng can disassemble and visualize the technique so that he can understand it better. Moreover, Hang Meng can record the temperature and time so that he can better grasp it. And his mental strength is not low. Especially after practicing the Yan Shenju, his mental strength has greatly increased. Ronan followed the steps on the parchment and did it step by step. There are a total of 60 steps to refine the primary transformation potion. These include multiple extractions, dilutions, crystallizations. If one step is not handled well, you have to start over. Fortunately, Ronan has Hang Meng to analyze and continuously feed him information flow. And he has enough mental power to enable him to react immediately as soon as the information is generated in his mind, so that the refining process will not go wrong. After more than 2 hours, Ronan concentrated on pouring the liquid in the crucible into a ceramic medicine bottle. The liquid was purple and bubbling. Finally it's done. After pouring all the liquid medicine into the medicine bottle and plugging it with a cork, Ronan breathed a sigh of relief. Even with his strong mental power and the constant supply of his spirit from his lifelong tree, his brain was a little tired after a long time of refining. After all, in the past 2 hours, Hang Meng analyzed everything in the refining process, and the information flow was like a river bursting its dam, pouring into his brain. What he refined was just the main material, liquid medicine. According to the records of the potion formula, as long as you drink the liquid made from the main ingredients and chant a spell, you can change your body and bones for 2 hours. However, the breath and magic fluctuations will not change. If you really want to impersonate someone else, you must also use the things of the person being impersonated, such as hair, blood, etc., as well as the magic power of the person being impersonated, as auxiliary materials, and add them to the liquid made from the main ingredients. After drinking it, you can completely transform your breath and magic fluctuations into the impersonated person. 5 days later, Ronan went to find Paul. After all, it was too incredible to be able to refine a 2nd level potion in 1 day. However, refining the potion in 5 days also surprised Paul. "You are really a genius in refining medicine," Paul also exclaimed when Ronan refined the anti-aging agent and anti-black agent with a very low success rate. It's a pity that the Kingdom Wizard Academy only selects students based on wizard qualifications. If your talent for alchemy was spread to the Wizard Islands, perhaps some schools that study potions would rush to recruit you. Ronan stopped Paul from continuing and asked him to drop a drop of blood into the potion and then inject magic power. Then, Ronan began to recite the spell recorded on the parchment. Paul's blood and magic power were integrated into the potion. The purple potion turned dark purple. After taking a look, Ronan immediately picked up the potion bottle, put it to his mouth, and drank the primary transformation potion. The taste of the potion was not good, sour, astringent, bitter, exploded in his mouth. Soon, Ronan drank the whole bottle of potion. Then, Ronan's skin began to wriggle all over his body. His hair began to curl and change color. After a while, his whole body completely turned into Paul's appearance. It's amazing. Paul looked at Ronan's appearance and couldn't help but sigh. Hurry up and get me a set of clothes to change into, Ronan said immediately. Also, your school badge. 2 hours are precious, and he doesn't want to waste them. Paul responded and immediately took out his clothes and school badge. After Ronan changed his clothes, he left Paul's residence, picked a deserted place, used the light body charm, and ran away. Half an hour later, Ronan arrived at the upper city of Triumph City and walked straight to the Kingdom Wizard Academy. Not long after, he arrived at the main gate of the Kingdom Wizard Academy. The Kingdom Wizard Academy is an ancient castle with a magnificent momentum. Standing at the main gate, you can see that there are dozens of wizard towers in the castle. After taking the wizard qualification test, he came here again after several months. There are several witchcraft formations at the main gate. Only by being led by someone, or with a school badge, can you pass through the witchcraft formation. When he came here for the test before, he was led by a wizard apprentice from the academy. Ronan took out the silver college badge with Paul Wilson's name engraved on it, held it in his hand, and walked towards the main gate. When he reached the main gate, ripples appeared in front of his eyes, and he safely passed through the magic array and entered the college. He had been to the college before, so he knew where the library was. It was a tall tower with a dome and 5 floors, which was different from those pointed wizard towers with 10 floors or more. He heard from Paul that this library was for wizard apprentices to enter and practice. Moreover, wizard apprentices of different levels can only move in areas of corresponding levels. Every time you enter the library, you have to consume the college points and the college badge. College points can be exchanged for gold coins. Or, you can also get college points by helping the professors in the college. After Ronan entered the library, he passed through several more magic arrays. Ripples appeared in front of his eyes, and the string of numbers on the college badge in his hand suddenly twisted and decreased by 30. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 62, Magic Metal and Magic Patterns. After entering the library, Ronan's eyes suddenly lit up. Above the library, there was a night sky. There were moons and stars in the night sky, emitting a brighter light than in reality. According to Paul, there are 5 floors in the library, and the first level wizard apprentice can only move on the first and second floors. The second level wizard apprentice can go to the third and fourth floors. The third level wizard apprentice can go to the 5th floor. The bricks and stones that make up each floor are hidden with witchcraft formations. Not bringing the school badge, not being the person, and the apprentice level is not enough will trigger witchcraft. Paul is a second level wizard apprentice, and he can only go to the 4th floor. Because the maintenance time of the primary transformation potion is only more than an hour. This time he came here to record the knowledge of alchemy. As for other books, he can wait until he refines more transformation potions in the future, and then come to record them. So, he walked quickly, looking for the bookshelf of alchemy knowledge. There are other wizard apprentices in the library. One by one, some look focused, some look indifferent, and they seem to be immersed in knowledge. Ronan found the basic knowledge of alchemy on the 1st floor. He opened the book and turned the pages quickly, summoning Hangmeng at the same time, and began to record. The basic knowledge of alchemy on the first floor was a basic introduction to alchemy and explained the assembly of alchemy parts. How to integrate magic ore and how to carve magic patterns were not mentioned. After Ronan recorded several books on alchemy, he went to the second floor. The alchemy knowledge on the second floor was more advanced on the basis of the first floor. He thought that the design of this library should be based on the level of wizard apprentices, with corresponding books placed. Ronan recorded it layer by layer. After an hour and 10 minutes, Ronan finally recorded all the alchemy knowledge from the second to fourth floors with Han Meng. After recording, he hurried downstairs, walked out of the library, and walked quickly out of the academy. After walking out of the academy, he walked to a place with fewer people. When he arrived at an empty alley, the muscles on his face began to wriggle. Gradually, his face, hair, and body shape returned to their original appearance. He immediately used the wizard's hand to take off Paul's wizard robe and put on his own clothes. Then, he left the upper city and returned to the bungalow in the middle city. Sitting down at the dining table, Ronan poured a glass of wine, moistened his throat, and summoned Han Meng to call up the knowledge of alchemy. At present, he knew all the alchemy methods that a second-level wizard apprentice could learn, as well as the specific steps of integrating magic ore and carving magic patterns. In alchemy, before integrating magic ore and carving magic patterns, it is necessary to use a hot melting method to soften the materials, to be refined into magic tools. If an alchemist wizard wants to complete the refining of magic tools alone, he must practice fire magic. He guessed that the reason why Paul's friend asked Paul for help was that he didn't want to be distracted by practicing fire magic. However, in King Mu's sword art, there is a spell for refining treasures. As long as you chant the spell and cast the spell, you can borrow the power of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to soften the materials. When wizards refine tools, they need to integrate magic ore. The King Mu sword art also has a method of incorporating metals into the Kingling sword. The Kingling sword can be refined by using only Kingling Kia and bamboo. However, adding some rare metals can make the Kingling sword more powerful. Ronan wanted to try adding metals from the wizard world. In the alchemy books, he learned about 20 kinds of magic conducting metals. Magic conducting metals are metals that can carry and conduct magic power. Among them, the most precious are mithril and fine gold. Ronan heard that both metals are in the hands of the 7 major wizard families in the kingdom, and they are rarely circulated. They are things that cannot be bought with valiant gold coins. Ronan planned to use other high-grade metals to strengthen the Kingling sword first. Later, he would slowly plan for mithril and fine gold. The most content in the alchemy knowledge he recorded was magic patterns. Carving magic patterns on wizard weapons can increase the power of wizard weapons. He recorded more than a dozen magic patterns on the 4th floor of the library. Sharp magic pattern, armor breaking magic pattern, spell breaking magic pattern, paralysis magic pattern, frost magic pattern, scorching magic pattern. The alchemy books said that, although magic patterns can enhance the power of magic tools, you cannot just carve several kinds of magic patterns on a magic tool. For example, if you carve frost magic patterns and scorching magic patterns on a magic tool at the same time, the 2 magic patterns will cancel each other out. Ronan chose sharp magic patterns, armor breaking magic patterns, spell breaking magic patterns, and paralysis magic patterns from a dozen kinds of magic patterns that are not mutually exclusive, and planned to add them when refining the Kingling sword. Thinking about this, Ronan stood up. He went to the room for refining medicine, took out the materials for refining the initial transformation potion, and placed them on the experimental table. He had learned from Paul before that there was a place where magic metal was sold privately. He had to change his appearance first, and then go to buy it. Ronan used his mental power to condense 10 wizards, and then began to refine. After about 2 hours, 3 initial transformation potions were refined. Primary transfiguration potion, proficient 2%. The primary transformation potion has also reached the proficient level. As long as it continues to be refined, the refining speed will be faster in the future. The quality of the potion will be improved, and the potion's effectiveness will last longer. Ronan drank a bottle of transformation potion. Suddenly, the magic power in the potion rose from his abdomen and spread to his whole body. His muscles and skin began to wriggle, and his bones itched slightly. Ronan used his mental power to control his skin, muscles, and bones. Soon, he turned into a thin-lipped young man with golden curly hair. Because no other people's things and magic were added to the potion, the breath and magic fluctuations did not change. However, the ancient wood longevity skill that Ronan practiced was close to nature, the breath was very peaceful, and the magic fluctuations were close to zero. Although there were no other people's things and magic, the camouflage power was only a little worse. Ronan put on his cloak, went out, and walked towards Guzan's blacksmith shop. Guzan blacksmith shop is the blacksmith shop that Paul told him about, which sells magic ore and magic metal privately. Guzan blacksmith shop is a shop that makes armor for knights. The magic ore and magic metal in the shop were originally used to make armor for knights. Armor made of magic ore and magic metal is convenient for alchemists to enchant. If a registered knight buys armor there, he must register his personal information completely. The amount of magic ore and magic metal integrated into the armor must also be registered. How much magic ore and magic metal Guzan blacksmith shop uses, and where it flows are all under the supervision of the royal family. However, the owner of Guzan blacksmith shop also wants to make more money. He will do some tricks in the circulation records of magic ore and magic metal, so as to sell part of the magic ore and magic metal privately. Because he bears a lot of risks, the price of selling this part privately will be much higher than the normal transaction. Guzan blacksmith shop is in the lower city. Ronan used the light body talisman and walked in a deserted place. After about half an hour, he arrived at the door of Guzan's blacksmith shop. Chapter 63 Kingling Sword enters Danshan. Guzan's blacksmith shop occupies a large storefront. Inside, the furnaces were burning with blazing fires, and waves of heat were blowing in the face. Several big men, bare-chested, revealing their muscular bodies, held a dark hammer in their hands, and kept hitting the iron sheets, making deafening noises. According to Paul's description, Ronan found the owner of Guzan's blacksmith shop, Guzan Naval. Guzan was a quarter dwarf, with a square figure. He was also bare-chested, with two chest muscles like rocks and a slightly protruding belly. His face was full of fierceness, and he had a pipe in his mouth. He puffed on the cigarette while forging iron. Mr. Naval. Ronan walked up and performed a noble etiquette. Paul Wilson introduced me here. Guzan glanced at Ronan, nodded, put down the hammer in his hand, and said, "Follow me." Then, he took Ronan to a basement. In the basement, there were various magic ores and magic conducting metals. Ronan immediately used his divine sense and Hangmeng to analyze the magic conducting metals. Finally, he selected two magic ores and metals mentioned in alchemy books, wood magic crystal and Kingyuan copper. Both metals are conducive to the conduction of wood magic power. When adding metals to the Kingling sword, the quality is more important than the quantity. The volume of wood magic crystal and Kingyuan copper he needed was only the size of a fist. Ronan immediately asked the price. Guzan answered that the price was more expensive than he expected. Fortunately, he now has enough gold coins. Ronan took out 3 large wooden boxes from the storage bag he kept close to him. With a wave of his hand, they fell to the ground. Ronan opened one of the wooden boxes and put some of the gold coins back into the storage bag. "This should be enough. Do you want to find someone to count?" Ronan said. Guzan immediately opened the wooden boxes one by one and inserted his big hand into the pile of gold coins to see if the wooden boxes were full of gold coins. After checking the 3 wooden boxes, he lifted each box slightly and tested the weight. "It should be about the same, but I can't find anyone to count it now." Gu Sien said, "You take the materials first. If the money is not enough, I will find Paul." Ronan put the wood crystal and Kingyuan copper into the storage black ring and left the blacksmith shop. Ronan returned to the bungalow and cut the 500-year-old Kingling Kian bamboo into several sections and put them into the storage bag. Then, he used the wine-chasing talisman and left Cakesuan City. He didn't know what would happen when refining the Kingling sword, so he planned to find a hidden place to offer sacrifices. Although the secular world of the world of immortal cultivation is safe enough, it is impossible to offer sacrifices in the secular world, where the spiritual energy is extremely thin, because it requires the help of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth when offering sacrifices. In Cakesuan City, there are wizards, and in the immortal realm of Huan's insect, there are monks. He had to find a place where there were neither wizards nor monks. and there were many such places in the kingdom of Valant. The concentration of energy particles in the wizard world is high, but not every place has wizards. Wizards mostly gather in big cities, especially in Triumph City, the capital of the kingdom. There will be no wizards living in those remote and backward places. So, Ronan left Triumph City and immediately used several amulets and wine-chasing amulets on himself. His figure suddenly accelerated, and he flew along the deserted path. He arrived at a remote town 300 miles away from Triumph City, and rented a mansion. The mansion had a cellar, which was the wine cellar of the previous residents. Ronan went to the cellar, and began to sacrifice the Kingling sword. Ronan sat cross-legged in the cellar, forming seals with his hands and muttering something. In front of him was a large ball of white light, and the spiritual energy of the surrounding heaven and earth was attracted by this ball of white light, and gathered into it. The essence of the 500-year-old Kingling Kia and bamboo was in the white light, and the rest of the residue fell to the ground. After more than 6 hours of refining, a faint green light appeared in the white light. This was the sword embryo of the Kingling sword. After having the sword embryo, other things could be added to it. Ronan's mind moved, and he took out the Woodyun magic crystal and Kingyuan copper from the storage ring. The Woodyun magic crystal is a 6-sided diamond crystal with the color of emerald. Kingyuan copper is a small piece of bronze emitting a green light. Ronan condensed 2 wizard hands, grabbed the 2 objects, and put them into the white light. Under the effect of the treasure refining spell, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth gathered, and the 2 objects gradually merged with the sword embryo of the Kingling sword. The light green light in the white light gradually deepened. After about 2 hours, the 2 objects were completely integrated into the sword embryo. The sword embryo showed a green color. Then, Ronan began to carve magic patterns on the sword embryo. Carving magic patterns, like drawing talismans, is a test of precision and concentration. Fortunately, Ronan had the assistance of Hang Meng, and he also had excellent mental power. While he was making seals with his hands and reciting the treasure refining formula, he used his mental power to attract the Zhengjin key in the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, and gathered it into a tiny sharp blade that was invisible to the naked eye, and carved magic patterns on the sword embryo. A sword is not big, so the number of magic patterns that can be carved is limited. The patterns between magic patterns cannot overlap, otherwise the magic weapon will be destroyed. Ronan planned to carve 4 kinds of magic patterns: sharp magic pattern, armor breaking magic pattern, law breaking magic pattern, and paralysis magic pattern, so he had to make a plan first. He first used Hang Meng to simulate the arrangement of the 4 kinds of magic patterns on the sword in his mind. He started carving until he found a solution that the 4 kinds of magic patterns would not interfere with each other. The Zhengjin key was attracted by his mental power and slowly carved patterns on the sword embryo. This was his first time carving magic patterns, so he was very careful and slow in carving. After more than 5 hours, all 4 kinds of magic patterns were carved on the sword embryo. Afterwards, he continued to chant the treasure refining spell, and the sword embryo gradually took shape, and the magic pattern on it stretched. After more than 3 hours, the Kingling sword finally took shape. He immediately withdrew his magic power. The white light suddenly disappeared. A 4-foot-long Kingling sword appeared in front of him. He condensed a wizard's hand, grabbed the flying sword, and brought it in front of him. There were lines on the sword of the flying sword, which looked like cloud patterns at first glance. But in fact, it was the arrangement of sharp magic patterns, armor breaking magic patterns, law breaking magic patterns, and paralysis magic patterns. Although the Kingling sword was sacrificed, he still couldn't control it. He still had to use a formula in the Kingmu sword art and cooperate with the power of the ancient wood longevity technique to make the Kingling sword recognize the master and refine it into his danshan. In this way, the Kingling sword was truly used by him. So Ronan used the ancient wood longevity magic power, injected it into the Kingling sword, and chanted it. The Kingling sword seemed to have a spirit, and gradually matched with his ancient wood longevity magic power. This process is not difficult, but it takes a long time. According to the Kingmu sword art, you can take time out every day to continuously feed the sword with magic power. After more than 10 days or a month, you can make the flying sword recognize the master. But Ronan has 2 natal longevity trees, which always restore his magic power and mental power. He can use magic power to feed the sword for a long time. Unconsciously, Ronan has been in the cellar for 3 days. Suddenly, he felt something in his heart. He formed a seal with his hands. Suddenly, the kindling sword turned into a green light, flew into his meridians, and went straight into his dungeon. He looked into his dungeon and immediately saw a kindling sword hanging in the misty ancient wood. Longevity magic power. Chapter 64. The 8th level of key refining. In the world of immortal cultivation, deep in a forest in the secular world, Ronan was the only one standing in the clearing in the forest. Ronan made a sword gesture, and his mind moved. A bright green flying sword suddenly appeared in front of him. On the flying sword, cloud patterns were densely covered. In fact, these were the 4 magic patterns arranged by Ronan. Sharp magic pattern, which can make the flying sword and the sword light of the flying sword sharper. Armor breaking magic pattern. When encountering physical obstacles, the flying sword can generate destructive magic power. Breaking magic pattern. When encountering magic power obstacles, the flying sword can generate the power to break the magic power. Paralysis magic pattern. If a person is hit by the flying sword, he will be paralyzed. Ronan flipped his right hand that was holding the sword gesture, and the flying sword immediately made a buzzing sound, and the powerful sword energy burst out. With a point of his finger, the flying sword immediately turned into a long green rainbow and shot forward. Boom. The flying sword swept through the forest, and the trees broke and fell to the side. The originally dense forest immediately revealed a bright passage. The dust stirred up by the trees hitting the ground was flying all over the sky. Ronan activated his magic power again, and the flying sword continued to move forward, stabbing straight towards a mountain. When the flying sword encountered the hard rock, the sword energy and the magic power of the armor-breaking magic pattern were activated together. The flying sword broke into the rock inch by inch, and the rock was like tofu to the flying sword. Ronan controlled the kindling sword, circled in the rocks for a circle, and then used the sword formula. Suddenly, a stone dust splashed on the mountain. The green flying sword flew out in the stone dust. When Ronan waved his hand, the flying sword turned into a green light and was put into his sleeves. Then, the flying sword entered his meridians and went straight into his dungeon. The ancient wood longevity magic power in the dungeon continued to nourish it. Ronan discovered that the ancient wood longevity magic power has the effect of making plants grow. The kindling sword, which was refined by the 500 years of kindling Kian bamboo, was immersed in his ancient wood longevity magic power. The age of kindling Kian bamboo was still increasing. Okay, there is one more magic weapon to protect the way. He could store the kindling sword in his dungeon. This kindling sword was no different from the magic weapons described by the cultivators in the world of immortality. During the days he was away, he had been paying attention to the safety of the 2 natal immortality trees. Before he left, he used the Yanshenju to separate 2 divine consciousnesses and injected them into the 2 trees. He could sense everything within a radius of 300 meters with the 2 natal immortality trees as the center. These days, nothing happened around his bungalow. Go back and continue to practice the immortality skills and cultivate the immortality trees. Thinking of this, Ronan's heart moved, and he disappeared in the woods. Later, he appeared in the cellar of the town outside Cakesun City. He used a stripping talisman to take off the clothes of the immortal world, and then put on the medieval style clothes of his previous life, and then left the mansion, and returned to Cakesun City. In Cakesun City, the sun rises high and everything grows. Ronan sits cross-legged in a small botanical garden, practicing the ancient wood longevity technique. The sun shines in from the windows of the botanical garden, hitting dozens of plants, presenting a thriving scene. Ronan found that practicing next to these plants, under the influence of the heart of nature, the speed of practicing the ancient wood longevity technique has been accelerated. He pinched his hands and placed them on his legs, showing the 5 hearts facing the sky practice posture, looking at his nose with his eyes and his heart with his nose, breathing in the spiritual energy of the world nearby. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth poured into him from the acupoints all over his body, guided by his mind, along the ancient wood longevity exercise route, along the meridians. After a circle in his body, it was refined into magic power and returned to the dungeon. At the same time, a mother tree of the natal longevity tree and a child tree of the natal longevity tree were also constantly refining the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Part of it was used to grow itself, and part of it was fed back to Ronan through the mysterious connection with him, flowing into Ronan's danshan. After breathing for about an hour, Ronan opened his eyes slightly, and a glimmer of divine light flashed through them. Breakthrough. Ronan called out Hangmeng, and adjusted the value. Lifespan. 223 strength. 15 spirit. 36 mana. 16 skills. Ancient wood longevity skill. 11th level 2%. Greenwood sword skill. 3rd level 1%. Yanshen skill. Proficient 5%. Talisman. Flying sword talisman. Grandmaster 81%. Golden armor talisman. Master 35%. Wind chasing talisman. Master 31%. Expand. Witchcraft. Entanglement. Proficient 63%. Wood armor skill. Proficient 2%. Healing skill. Proficient 6%. Rapid growth skill. Master 2%. Expand. Knowledge. Magic plant science. Master 23%. Alchemy science. Proficient 68%. Potion. Growth green liquid. Proficient 36%. Primary transformation potion. Proficient 2%. Expand. Magic pattern. Sharp magic pattern. Proficient 5%. Armor breaking magic pattern. Proficient 3%. Spell breaking magic pattern. Proficient 6%. Paralysis magic pattern. Proficient 2%. Immortal cultivation realm. Key refining level 7 wizard level. Level 3 wizard apprentice spiritual plant. Lifelong tree year. 85. After reaching the 8th level of key refining, the mana value increased, and the mana in the danshan was further compressed. The verdant mist-like mana became more concentrated. Although the practice of the ancient wood longevity technique has improved the physical body, it is not a physical training method after all, and it does not improve the physical body much. The reason why his spirit is far ahead of strength and spirit is because he practiced the Shenyanju. The Shenyanju was originally used to separate the spiritual consciousness and control multiple puppets. However, his separated spiritual consciousness is not necessarily used to control puppets. On the mother tree and the child tree of the lifelong tree, a spiritual consciousness of his was left. The separated spiritual consciousness can also enable him to control multiple wizard's hands at the same time. In Alan's bungalow, he once summoned Hangmeng and secretly analyzed the physical values of this female druid. He found that the power of this female druid was higher than his. He knew that in the wizard world, only by tempering the body with energy particles can the physical strength be improved. Generally speaking, energy particles are used to temper the body after being promoted to a formal wizard, because at that time, the physical fitness has improved, and the degree of manipulation of energy particles has been strengthened, so there will be no danger when tempering the body. In the wizard apprentice stage, although energy particles can also be used to temper the body, there is inevitably the risk of damaging the body. The druid school's transfiguration requires changing the body shape. When performing it, energy particles will definitely flow through the body. Perhaps at that time, Alan had already tempered her body with energy particles. The druid school is proficient in healing. Their physical injuries can be treated with healing. Ronan thought about the reason why Alan's physical strength was so strong for a while. Then he collected his mind and looked at other values. His spirit was already more than 10 points higher than Awan, and his magic power was also close to Awan. Awan is a 3rd level wizard apprentice who is close to being a formal wizard. In this way, his spirit should have reached the standard of a formal wizard, but his mana, that is, the magic power of the wizarding world, is slightly insufficient. However, although his mana is small, his recovery speed is fast, because he has 2 lifelong trees that constantly inject mana into his danshan. Dear readers, Alan has changed from a formal wizard to the peak of a 3rd level wizard apprentice, in order to stabilize the plot and prices. Chapter 65 Space Witchcraft. Triumph City, Ronan's bungalow. Ronan condensed 20 wizard hands and refined the primary transformation potion. Condensing 20 wizard hands of ordinary size is his limit. If he wants, he can also condense a wizard hand the size of a person and perform a palm technique that falls from the sky. Primary Transfiguration Potion. Mastery 2%. After several days of refining, the proficiency of the Primary Transformation Potion has risen from proficiency to mastery. This makes him refine faster and the potion more effective. Although he has been in the wizard world for several months, his mental strength and magic power have reached the level of a 3rd level wizard apprentice. But his understanding of wizard training is much worse than that of wizard apprentices of the same level. After all, after he failed in the Kingdom Wizard Academy, he stayed in Triumph City and became a wild wizard apprentice. He did not go to other academies or join any school. Since he could enter the library of the Kingdom Wizard Academy to read, he would record all the books in it with Han Meng. In order to stay in the library for a longer time, he planned to prepare several transformation potions that could transform him into Paul. At that time, if the effect of the potion was about to end, he could continue to drink it. After putting 20 bottles of primary transformation potions with only the main ingredients in the storage black ring, Ronan went out to find Paul. "You are not going to the academy today?" Ronan asked in Paul's bungalow. "No, I'm going to build a witchcraft model of burning hell flame at home today." "What's wrong?" "Give me a few strands of your hair and your magic power," Ronan said, and took out a pair of scissors and a thumb-sized obsidian from the storage black ring. Obsidian is the best crystal stone for carrying magic power in the Kingdom of Valant. It was only a thumb-sized piece, and Ronan bought it and spent a lot of money. Ronan engraved the magic storage pattern he saw in the library that day on it, which can temporarily lock the magic power in it. Black obsidian. Isn't this cheap? Paul looked at it and widened his eyes. "Where did you get the money? Did you secretly sell the primary transformation potion?" "Of course not. I don't want to implicate the family." After Ronan reassured Paul a little, he said, "Come on, help me. If you have no money in the future, I can lend it to you. The interest rate is lower than that of the Lani Vault. Okay, if you meet a beautiful woman on the street who greets you, you can leave on the pretext of having something to do. Don't rely on my handsome appearance to do something to let me down. Those are my girlfriends." As Paul spoke, he cut off a bunch of hair and filled the obsidian with magic power. Ronan took the hair and magic power, asked Paul for a wizard robe and academy badge, and left immediately. Ronan returned to the bungalow, chanting a spell, while dividing Paul's hair and magic power into 20 portions, and putting them into 20 bottles of primary transformation potion. The purple primary transformation potion immediately turned dark red. After storing all the primary transformation potions in the black ring, Ronan went out and walked towards the upper city. When he was about to reach the upper city, he walked to an empty alley and released his spiritual sense. After sensing that no one was approaching, he changed into Paul's wizard robe and drank the primary transformation potion. Suddenly, his muscles and bones itched slightly, and his face twitched. In just 2 seconds, he turned into Paul's appearance. After Ronan entered the Kingdom Wizard Academy, he avoided people to avoid meeting the wizard apprentices that Paul knew, and exposing himself after a few words. After walking for about a moment, Ronan entered the library. Then, he started on the first floor and looked for knowledge that interested him. He planned to record this kind of knowledge with Han Meng today. Ronan walked between the bookshelves, his eyes sweeping over the books with quaint covers. The paper of the books in the library is very different from the parchment outside. The quality of the paper is almost as good as his previous life. There must be a wizard who improved the method of making paper. Ronan walked for a while and suddenly stopped. He saw a book, Introduction to Space Magic. A ray of light flashed in his eyes. His life tree is growing continuously, and it is inevitable that it will be tall and majestic in the future. That small botanical garden will definitely not be able to accommodate it. In this case, he can only transplant it outside the room, but it will be a bit conspicuous. If it comes to that, he can only move out of Triumph City to live. But in that case, it will be inconvenient for him to obtain materials. I wonder if there is a solution to space magic? Ronan thought to himself, and took this book Introduction to Space Magic from the bookshelf, and began to record. After recording all the books on space magic on the first floor, Ronan went to the second floor. 3 hours later, Ronan was recording on the third floor. Feeling that the effect of the primary transformation potion was about to take effect, he went downstairs, left the library, found a deserted place, and drank a bottle of primary transformation potion. Then, he walked back to the library. Ronan walked out of the library at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Although the library of the academy is open until very late, but Paul has no place to live in the academy. The residences in the academy are for some top nobles, that is, disciples of top wizard families. Ordinary wizard apprentices can only live outside the academy, because at night, there is a curfew in Triumph City, and they cannot stay in the academy. Ronan had to leave first. However, he gained a lot today. At least, he recorded all the contents of Space Witchcraft in the library. He also spent some time recording other knowledge. After Ronan left the library, he returned to his bungalow and began to recall the relevant contents of Space Witchcraft. In the book Introduction to Space Witchcraft, he knew that space witchcraft is mainly divided into two categories: space creation and space crossing. Space creation is the witchcraft of making storage magic tools and extending space. Among the witchcraft of crossing space, there are witchcrafts such as teleportation, space confinement, and space exile. In the book Anecdotes of Space Witchcraft, he knew that there were not many wizards who studied space witchcraft. This was because the royal family restricted the spread of most of the witchcraft knowledge of space travel. Studying space travel may open up other planes, which will bring danger to the kingdom. Therefore, most wizard apprentices can only study the witchcraft of space creation. However, this kind of witchcraft has no offensive power, so not many people study it. The space witchcraft Ronan saw in the library was all about how to create space. The witchcraft of space travel was not involved. However, this is enough for me now. Ronan thought. He would use this space creating witchcraft to expand his botanical garden. When there is a chance in the future, he will obtain the witchcraft of space travel. Chapter 66 Extending the Magic Patterns and Witchcraft Formations. Ronan saw a method of extending space in the books about space witchcraft in the library, which was to depict or carve extended magic pattern on the objects that needed to be extended. Extended magic pattern was very complicated, but Ronan had Hang Meng, and the number of strokes, the number of turns, the distance ratio between the patterns, were all imprinted in his mind. As long as he was focused when carving the magic pattern, the input of mana was stable enough, and he was patient enough, there would be no problem. But now, the problem he faced was that the bricks of this bungalow were not magic stones, and they could not carry magic power at all. He had to buy magic stones separately, carve extended magic patterns on the magic stones, and then embed them into the bricks of the room where the botanical garden was located. Magic stones were expensive, and it was impossible to embed magic stones in every brick. He had to use the witchcraft formation to arrange the magic stones engraved with extended magic pattern. Only in this way could his small botanical garden be extended. Hang Meng, start simulating the formation. Thinking of this, Ronan immediately gave Hang Meng an order. He had to plan the magic formation first, and then buy the corresponding magic stones according to the formation. Ronan stood in his small botanical garden and looked around. In his eyes, there were circles of blue light passing through the four walls of the small botanical garden. Soon, a small botanical garden of equal proportions formed in his mind. Then, with the help of Hang Meng, he continued to construct the magic formation in his mind. After more than 2 hours, a stable magic formation was finally constructed. This wizard formation is a polyhedron with 10 vertices. The 10 vertices are distributed on the 4 walls of this room. I have to buy magic stones. Thinking of this, Ronan began to make a primary transformation potion. He had to change his appearance and then buy magic stones. He quickly refined a primary transformation potion. He took the potion and went out, walked all the way to the lower city, found an empty corner, changed his clothes, and drank the transformation potion, turning into the appearance of the day when he bought the wood magic crystal and Kingyuan copper. Then, he walked to Guzan's blacksmith shop. Guzan, the owner of the blacksmith shop, was 1/4 dwarven. He heard from Paul that most of the magic stones in the blacksmith shop were actually collected by Guzan's dwarf relatives and transported secretly. Before the advent of the wizard era in the Dawn continent, the dwarves had already lived a displaced life. Today, most dwarves are scattered throughout the wizard world, making a living by hunting for treasures. Only a few dwarves, relying on their dwarf casting talents, live in the cities of the kingdom, forging iron for others, and live a stable life. Ronan bought 10 pigeon egg-sized wood magic crystals at the blacksmith shop. He had used this magic crystal before, and it worked well. Moreover, it was conducive to the carrying and conduction of wood magic. After buying the wood magic crystal, Ronan thought in his heart, if you want to embed the magic crystal into bricks and stones without leaving any traces, you need to use earth witchcraft or earth magic. And he has not learned any of them yet. So tonight, he can only carve extended magic pattern on the wood magic crystal. Tomorrow, I will go to the library of the Kingdom Wizard Academy again to record an earth-based witchcraft. Ronan immediately used the treasure refining technique of refining the Kingling sword in the Kingmu sword art, pinched the formula, and chanted the spell. Suddenly, a white light lifted up one of the wood magic crystals. Ronan used his spirit and magic power to connect the Jengjin key in the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, forming a carving knife that was invisible to the naked eye, and carved extended magic pattern on the wood magic crystal. Time passed. Ronan carved the wood magic crystals one by one very carefully. After a sleepless night, he finally carved extended magic pattern on all 10 wood magic crystals. Ronan's mental strength is not bad now. Even if he slept less for one night, he didn't feel tired. At this time, the sun was rising, and Ronan put away the 10 wood magic crystals, slapped a cleansing talisman on himself, and went out. First, he had a hearty breakfast, and then walked to the lower city. Arriving at Paul's bungalow, he asked Paul. Knowing that Paul would not go to the academy today, he told Paul that he would go to the library of the academy today, and asked Paul not to go out or answer the door. After entering the Kingdom Wizard Academy, Ronan stayed in the library until 5 o'clock in the afternoon. After all, it was quite time consuming and troublesome to come to the academy library. Although he came here to learn earth magic, he also recorded other witchcraft knowledge with Han Meng. After leaving the academy and arriving in the middle city, Ronan felt hungry and went to the Wild Beer Bar. He ordered 2 steaks with sauce and 2 pieces of bread as dinner, and finally drank a glass of honey wine. After eating and drinking, he returned to the bungalow and began to practice earth magic. The magic he used to embed crystals into bricks is called primary earth control, which is a medium level first level magic. He picked up a wood magic crystal with the wizard's hand and pressed it on a brick. Then, he used his magic power to chant and cast a spell. The spell echoed in the room, and ripples immediately appeared on the surface of the brick. The brick gradually softened. The wood crystal slowly sank into the brick, as if it was sinking into a swamp. Elementary earth controlling technique, 1% for beginners. Elementary earth controlling technique, 2% for beginners. The proficiency of the elementary earth control technique was rising very quickly. When he successfully integrated 2 wood crystals with extended magic patterns carved into the brick, the elementary earth controlling technique also reached the proficient level. At this level, you can build a witchcraft model. With the experience of building witchcraft models many times, coupled with his excellent mental power, Ronan can now skillfully build a witchcraft model of the first level medium witchcraft even without Han Meng. But with the help of Han Meng, the speed of building a witchcraft model is faster. He used his mental and mana to quickly form lines in his mind and build a model. In less than half an hour, the witchcraft model of the elementary earth control technique was built. Then, Ronan used his magic power to inject it into the witchcraft model of the elementary earth control technique, and continued to cast the spell. After more than an hour, Ronan only had the last wood crystal left, which needed to be melted into the masonry. Now, the 4 walls of the botanical garden have magic crystals, and only the last one is needed to form a witchcraft formation. When Ronan melted the last magic crystal into the masonry, suddenly, ripples appeared in the space in front of him. In just a moment, the space suddenly expanded. Ronan swept his eyes across the room. The ceiling and the 4 walls were all expanded outward by more than 2 meters. Ronan walked out of the room and looked inside from the outside. He saw that the space inside had not changed at all. When he walked into the room again, the scene in front of him suddenly expanded and returned to the expanded space. This is the magic of extended magic pattern. Ronan sighed in his heart. Chapter 67. Searching for the secret method in the immortal realm of the Huanzan sect. Ronan looked at the ceiling that was more than 5 meters high and thought to himself, this life tree does not need to be transplanted for the time being. It can still grow in the room for a while. The current life tree is 85 years old and its height has reached his nose. In the future, the life tree will definitely grow taller, and it will not be surprising to break through the ceiling. After all, his life tree was transformed from the elf treasure tree, and the elf treasure tree is a magical plant that can become a world tree. What is a world tree? Even if it really grows up, its roots and stems, and its subtrees can spread all over the world. The inhabitants of the world can see this tree, no matter where they are. The world tree is like the sun to the people in the world. Not to mention the world tree. Now, all wizards and knights who sneak into the elf kingdom can see a big tree emitting holy light, no matter where they are in the elf kingdom. He estimated that, even if he could master the extended magic pattern to perfection, it would be impossible to extend this small room to the size of the city and Triumph City. Extended magic pattern can only extend space to a limited extent and cannot create a huge space. Perhaps, in the wizard world, there are wizards who can really create space. But he doesn't know yet. The knowledge of space magic in the library is far from the level of creating another large space. The books only teach readers to create a small space in the magic weapon. Using extended magic pattern to extend space is just a matter of interest. We still have to find more powerful space magic or other methods to accommodate the growing life tree. I wonder what secret methods there are in the world of immortal cultivation. In the past, in the world of immortal cultivation, did the great masters who practiced the ancient wood immortality skill also plant their own life tree outside? Thinking of this, Ronan decided to go to the world of immortal cultivation to explore. He immediately had an idea and traveled to the forest of the Zeuxan world. He released his consciousness and confirmed that there was no one nearby, so he used a stripping charm on himself. The clothes of the wizard world immediately slid down, leaving nothing behind. He immediately put away his clothes and took out the clothes of the Zeuxan world. He quickly changed himself with the hands of a wizard, tied his hair into a bun, and inserted an ebony hairpin. Then, he slapped himself with a wine-chasing charm and flew away in the direction of the Huans insects fairyland. Ronan took the jade pendant of the Liu family's ancestor, passed through the mist array, and entered the Huans insects fairyland. He hadn't been here for a while. He looked at the blue sky and green mountains of the Huans insects fairyland, as well as the fields and shanties that stretched out under the mountains. He suddenly felt like he had worked in the city for a long time in his previous life and went to the countryside to relax his body and mind. He walked into the east district of the shanty towns and first went to the Yuzaheo market, which was closest to this entrance and exit. After strolling around the Yuzaheo market, he did not find any spells or talismans involving space. Moreover, he found that the price of talismans was more expensive than before. Could it be that something happened in the world of immortal cultivation again? Ronan thought and continued to stroll around the market. After strolling around for a long time, he did not find any spells related to space, so he left and went to the A-shaped market. After visiting the A-shaped and C-shaped markets in succession, Ronan still did not see books on space spells. Could it be that this kind of spell is too high level and will not be sold in the market in the shanty area? Ronan guessed in his heart. In the immortal realm of Huan's insect, after cultivating to the foundation building stage, one can enter Huan's insect and enjoy the rich spiritual energy brought by the spiritual vein spring. The key refining casual cultivators in the immortal realm of Huan's insect are distributed in the mansion area and the shanty area. The shanty area is mostly inhabited by casual cultivators below the 7th level of key refining. After reaching the 7th level of key refining, one can become a steward of the immortal cultivation family in the mansion area. The former steward of the Yu family, and now the steward of the Song family, Lin Shan, is at the 7th level of key refining. If a cultivator above the 7th level of key refining lives in the shanty area, he is basically a powerful figure in the shanty area, and is a well-known person. The Zanfu master he killed was a 7th level key refining Fu master. He could live in the mansion area, but he wanted to bully people in the shanty area. The mansion area is mostly the home of cultivators from the 7th to the 12th level of key refining. Maybe there are books on space magic in the mansion area. Ronan thought and walked towards the mansion area. He heard other cultivators chatting that the mansion area is divided into 4 areas: east, west, south, and north, just like the shanty area. The strongest immortal cultivation family in each mansion area manages the shanty area next to it. There is a low wall and an invisible band between the mansion area and the shanty area. If you don't have an identity card for the mansion area, you have to pay to enter the mansion area. Ronan arrived at the city gate of the low wall and paid a low-grade spirit stone as the entrance fee. Walking into the city, you can see that the buildings in the mansion area are not much different from those in the normal city in the secular world, but they are completely different from those in the shanty area. It has wide streets, and 4 carriages can run on it at the same time. The streets are paved with bluestone slabs, which looks very clean. Its appearance is not comparable to those muddy paths in the shanty area. The mansions on the street are basically blue tiles and white walls. In contrast, the simple wooden houses in the shanty area are even more shabby. Ronan used Hangmeng to analyze the pedestrians on the street. Through the returned values, it can be known that the average cultivation level of pedestrians on the street is also 3 or 4 small realms higher than that of the cultivators in the shanty area. Ronan found a kind-looking cultivator on the street who looked to be in his 40s, and whose cultivation level was the 7th level of key refining. "This Taoist friend, I have a question to ask you." Ronan bowed. The cultivator looked at Ronan and said, "Dao, please tell me, where can I buy and sell spells, magic tools, etc.?" Ronan said. After hearing this, the monk knew that Ronan was coming to the mansion area for the first time. But seeing that Ronan was handsome, with heroic features, and looked very young, he did not dare to look down on him. After all, most of the powerful monks in the Return to the True Sect Immortal realm came from the shanty area. He himself also worked hard from the shanty area. This man in front of him had an extraordinary appearance. Who knew if he would become a powerful person in the Return to the True Sect Immortal realm in the future? The cultivator's mind raced for a while, and he did not dare to act rashly, so he bowed and returned the greeting. "This Taoist friend is polite. I'm Zhengen. There is no market in the mansion area, and the places where things are bought and sold are all shops and chambers of commerce. The shops and chambers of commerce are firmly controlled by the Xiuxin family, and they are quite orderly. It's not like the market in the shanty town area, where they just send a deacon to collect protection fees. Although the things in the shops and chambers of commerce are expensive, the quality is extremely guaranteed. This Taoist friend, since you are a newcomer, why don't we make friends and I will take you to the shops and chambers of commerce?" Zhengen thought that the road to immortal cultivation in the future would be long and difficult, and more friends would mean more care, so he told Ronan a lot of information. Ronan also needed someone to recognize the way, and the two hit it off immediately and walked along the street while chatting. Chapter 68 Earthly Immortal Technique. Zhengen took Ronan to a busy street. The street was lined with shops, just like the prosperous cities in the secular world. The most eye-catching thing on the street was a 5-story building with red pavilions and painted buildings, which looked quite luxurious. On the door of the high-rise building, there was a plaque with the 3 characters Jubeo building inscribed on it. Zhengen said, "Most of the cultivation items in the east area of the mansion are sold on this street. 30% of the shops on this street, as well as the Jubeo building, are the products of the Song family. And before that, 50% of the shops in the Jubeo building here were the products of the Yu family. The Yu family used to be the only one in the east area of the mansion, and it was inevitable that other cultivation families would take advantage of it." As he said that, Zhengen said, "Dao, then you take your time to look at it. I'll take my leave first. If we meet again in the future, we'll discuss the Tao again." When cultivators choose their skills and instruments, the fewer people who know about them, the better, because this involves the choice of their trump cards. If the cards are exposed, the enemy will choose the skills and instruments that can restrain him. Zhengen knew what was going on, so he left first. After saying goodbye to Zhengen, Ronan walked towards the street. As he walked, he thought to himself that, although the population of this mansion area was not as large as that of the shanty town, its population density was almost the same as that of Triumph City. Ronan was not very familiar with the distribution of the mansion area when he first came to the mansion area, so he found a bookstore to see if there was a map for sale. When he walked into the bookstore, he saw a boy of 12 or 13 sitting at the wooden counter, wearing a melon-shaped hat, holding a book, and reading with relish. Ronan scanned it with his spiritual sense and knew that the boy was a cultivator of the second level of key refining. It stands to reason that a cultivator of the second level of key refining should find it difficult to enter the mansion area, so the boy should be the offspring of a naturalized cultivator in the mansion area. Perhaps the owner of this bookstore is the boy's parents. Ronan walked to the counter and tapped it lightly with the phalanx of his index finger. After hearing this, the young man felt as if his soul was suddenly pulled out of the book. He shuddered, his eyes suddenly widened, and he looked at the counter. After seeing Ronan, he forced a smile and said, "Sir, please feel free to buy anything you want." Ronan also smiled slightly. "My dear, do you have a map of the mansion area here?" "Yes, of course." The young man walked to a bookshelf, tiptoed, took out a map from the bookshelf, and then said, "This map is not worth a low-grade spirit stone, and we don't accept gold or silver here. As long as you buy a book here, it will be free." Ronan originally wanted to buy the map and see what books there were in the bookstore. After hearing what the young man said, he walked to the bookshelf and scanned the books line by line. He chose a book and pulled it out. The title of the book was Records of Cultivation Sects. When he opened it, it was the same as the books sold in the shantytown market. Only the first few pages had content, and the rest were all blank pages. The first few pages outlined the content of the book. This book contains the stories of the major sects in the world of immortal cultivation that the author knows. After reading the first few pages, Ronan knew that in the world of immortal cultivation, in addition to the Huanzan sect and Changsheng sect that he knew, there were 4 other forces, either immortal cultivation sects or immortal cultivation alliances, which were listed as the 8 righteous ways with Huanzan sect and Changsheng sect. In addition to the righteous sects, there are also 6 demon sects. The book says that, although the righteous way is the righteous way, it is not really righteous. It's just that the cultivation methods of the demon sects are extremely evil, bloody, and self-defeating compared to the cultivation methods of the 8 righteous ways. After outlining the content of the book, the author started to write in detail from Huanzan sect. After writing less than half a page, Ronan turned to the next page, and it was blank. Ronan took the book in his hand and looked around to see if there were any other books that interested him. On the bookshelf, there were also some storybooks, some books on drawing talismans, and some books on spells and cultivation methods. Ronan took out the books of spells and skills and looked at them. He saw that most of the spells were of the first order low level and first order medium level, and they were not to his liking. The level of the skills was not high either, so he stuffed the books back one by one. "This one will do." Ronan took the cultivation sect records, which had only a few pages, and walked to the counter. The boy glanced at the cultivation sect records and said, "2 low-grade spirit stones." After all, this book was just a book of knowledge, so it was naturally much cheaper than the secret book. Ronan paid the spirit stones immediately. "Okay," the boy said, and walked to the back hall. Not long after, he took out a book. Together with the map, he handed it to Ronan. Ronan was used to checking the goods immediately after buying things in the shantytown market. After taking the things handed over by the boy, he immediately opened it and checked it. He first looked at the map. The map was not detailed, but it drew the general distribution of each area. Which area is for residents, which area is for the market, and which area is for the romantic area are all marked. Ronan guessed that here, like Cakeso City, maps that are too detailed are prohibited from sale. This is the manager of an area, in order to prevent bad people from using detailed maps to cause trouble. After just a glance at the map, Ronan used Hangmeng to write it down. Then, Ronan opened the records of cultivation sects. The content about the Huanzan sect was similar to what he heard from Lin Chan and Li Yao. He quickly flipped through it. The next thing to talk about is the Changsheng sect. The book says that the Changsheng sect is adjacent to the Huanzan sect. The immortal domain of the Changsheng sect is almost the same as the immortal domain of the Huanzan sect. It relies on a spiritual vein and is divided into the sect, the mansion area, and the shed area from the inside to the outside. In the sect, there is also a Yuanying ancestor sitting in charge. In addition to the Yuanying ancestor, there are more than a dozen foundation building real people. It is rumored that thousands of years ago, when the Changsheng sect was founded, it was extremely powerful. King Yuanzi, the ancestor of the Changsheng sect, practiced a method of earthly immortals, and had his own spiritual realm. However, at the beginning, others did not know that King Yuanzi practiced the method of earthly immortals. After King Yuanzi founded the sect, he used the spiritual veins of the Changsheng sect as a dojo to suppress the area, married 300 beautiful wives and concubines, and accepted 3,000 disciples. Later, the fact that King Yuanzi had his own spiritual realm was exposed, which attracted the covetousness of various immortal cultivation forces. At that time, more than a dozen immortal cultivation forces united to attack the Changsheng sect. King Yuanzi risked his life to repel these 10 or so immortal cultivation forces, and killed most of the top cultivators of those immortal cultivation forces before he ran out of energy, and his descendants and disciples relied on his legacy of skills, spells, magic weapons, spiritual plants and other things to survive. After thousands of years, although the Changsheng sect no longer has the glory of the past, it still exists in this immortal cultivation world. In the current world of immortal cultivation, among the 8 righteous ways and the 6 demonic sects, this is the sect with the longest history. The book says that after King Yuanzi's death, the earthly immortal method remained in the Changsheng sect. However, at that time, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth gradually receded like the tide. The people of the Changsheng sect started to practice the earthly immortal method from the beginning. For the first 100 years, the practitioners were able to open up the earthly immortal spiritual realm. However, in the future, the spiritual energy became increasingly thin, and it was difficult to form a spiritual realm, which was incomparable to the spiritual realm of King Yuanzi in the past. Later, when the spiritual energy became thin to a certain extent, the people who practiced the earthly immortal method could not even open up the spiritual realm. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 69, Master Level Wood Combat Magic. I wonder if the earthly immortal realm can accommodate my lifelong tree. Ronan thought as he read the book. According to the book, the spiritual energy in the world of cultivation has retreated, and this earthly immortal method, because it cannot open up the earthly immortal realm, is basically a useless method. However, the wizard world is different. It has extremely rich energy particles. If this method is practiced in the wizard world, it should be able to open up the earthly immortal realm. Now this earthly immortal method should still be in the Changsheng sect, right? Ronan's mind raced, thinking about how to get this earthly immortal method. The structure of the Changsheng sect is similar to that of the Huanzin sect. If you reach the foundation building stage, you should be able to enter the sect. First, cultivate the foundation building stage, then enter the immortal realm of the Changsheng sect, and find a way to obtain this earthly immortal method. Now this earthly immortal method is difficult to cultivate, and logically, the Changsheng sect should not pay much attention to it. Ronan thought as he put the map and the records of cultivation sects into his storage bag and walked out. Sir, take care. There are always new books in the bookstore. Come in and have a look next time you pass by. The young man in the melon-shaped hat said goodbye to Ronan enthusiastically. When Ronan walked out of the bookstore, he looked at the Jubeo building again. At one glance, his eyes froze slightly. He saw a familiar shadow, a middle-aged man with 2 wisps of beard and a fat body. It was the steward of the Song family, Lin Shan. When Lin Shan walked out of the Jubeo building, he glanced at the street and saw Ronan. Lin Shan first waved, then walked forward and bowed. Deo Iao, I haven't seen you for a long time. Deo Iao, are you here to buy fighting magic items from Jubeo building? After listening to what Lin Shan said, Ronan remembered that he had seen the price of talismans rise in the market before, and he was more certain that something big was going to happen. Yes, let's see if there is anything I like. Ronan did not ask what the big thing was, but said, Deo Iao, can you please have a word with me? Lin Shan said. Ronan nodded and immediately followed Lin Shan to the less crowded side of the street. Lin Shan whispered, "Fellow Daoist, are you going to attack the Changsheng sect too?" Ronan was moved when he heard this, but did not answer, and said, "You are going to attack?" Lin Shan sighed. "I didn't want to attack at first, but this time the sect got the news that the previous ambush of the Changsheng sect's nascent soul patriarch was not entirely fake. The Changsheng sect's nascent soul patriarch is really about to die, so he came up with a plan to pretend to be dead, just to weaken the Huanzhen sect's power before he died. This time, the Huanzhen sect is determined to win, so it forcibly recruited all the major immortal cultivation families in the Huanzhen sect's fairyland to attack the Changsheng sect. As a steward of the Lin family, I'm also among those forced to be recruited. I'm afraid that after I die, my wife and daughter will have no one to take care of them, so I spent most of my family wealth and bought a lot of life-saving things in the Jubeo Tower. Fellow Daoist, if you go too, let's act together. At least we can take care of each other." Ronan listened to Lin Shan's words, his thoughts racing. Changsheng sect has the Earth Immortal technique. When he heard that they were going to attack Changsheng sect, he also wanted to go and attack together. However, he quickly calmed down. In the fight between Huanzhen sect and Changsheng sect, there were foundation building masters and Yuanying ancestors. These key refining cultivators were all low-level fighters. The aftermath of the battle between foundation building and Yuanying might hurt them. What's more, he didn't know whether the news that the Yuanying ancestor of Changsheng sect was about to die was another fishing trip. If he went, he would put himself in danger. In the fight between Huanzhen sect and Changsheng sect, no matter who wins or loses, the Earth Immortal technique is still there, but I don't know who has it. Ronan thought. He felt that, as long as he kept living and cultivated to the foundation building stage, or even the Yuanying stage, and his strength improved, he would always have contact with the Earth Immortal technique one day. He really shouldn't take the risk at this time. I thought about it and decided not to go, Ronan said to Lin Shan. Lin Shan immediately looked regretful. After chatting with Ronan for a few more words, he said goodbye and left. After watching Lin Shan leave, Ronan also left the mansion area, left the Huanzhen sect fairyland, and returned to the wizard world. In the wizard world, there is a monster forest 300 miles outside Cakesuan city. Ronan is practicing the 3-wood-based combat witchcrafts learned from Awen. Witchcraft, Entanglement, Master 53%, Wood Armor, Master 12%, Healing, Master 16%, Expand. He has mastered all 3 witchcrafts to the master level. He used the ancient wood's longevity magic power and poured it into the witchcraft model of the wood armor. Suddenly, a layer of wood armor condensed all over his body. The wood armor was brown with some green butts, thick and tough. He moved his mind, and the wood armor on the back of his hand extended a sharp thorn like a sword. He waved his hand at a tree that was as big as a man's embrace, and the trunk was cut off and collapsed to the side. Entanglement. Ronan poured his magic power into the witchcraft model. Suddenly, 5 vines shot out from the back of his hand covered with wooden armor and continued to grow. With the combination of master level entanglement and master level wooden armor, the vines can not only break through the ground, but also be released from the wooden armor. The vines extended rapidly in the air and wrapped around a tree in a blink of an eye. Ronan just pulled it lightly, and the tree was broken. Under his control, the 5 vines wrapped around the broken tree trunk and swung back and forth in the forest, making a whirring sound. Suddenly, Ronan's eyes flashed. His spiritual sense sensed that a huge monster was approaching this side. This is a Warcraft forest, and it is not surprising that there are monsters. Ronan still maintained the wooden armor technique and used the entanglement technique to carry the tree trunk and ran towards the huge monster. After running for a while, he saw a snake-like creature as tall as 2 people soaring in the forest. This snake-like creature was dark green with 3 red eyes on its head. 3-eyed anaconda, a first-class superior beast. Ronan had seen this beast in the library after reading the beast encyclopedia. This beast, from head to toe, could be used as witchcraft material, whether it was its eyes, snake scales, sharp teeth or blood. Ronan wanted to use this beast to try out his wood-based combat witchcraft. He swung his hand, and the tree trunk wrapped in vines cut through the air, and then whistled towards the three-eyed anaconda. Snap! The three-eyed anaconda swung its tail and smashed the tree trunk to pieces, and a ball of sawdust exploded in the air. Ronan used his magic power, and more than 10 vines flew out from the wooden armor on the back of his hand, and entangled the three-eyed anaconda. The three-eyed anaconda kept swung its tail, and could only slightly open a few vines, but could not break them. The next moment, the remaining vines tightly entangled the three-eyed anaconda. The three-eyed anaconda swung its body violently and struggled endlessly, but it could not break free at all. Ronan kicked his feet, and controlled the vines to shrink continuously. With the power of the vines, he quickly rushed towards the anaconda. When he was about to reach the body of the anaconda, the spikes on the wooden armor on the back of his hand suddenly became longer. Then, he kicked his feet again, jumped high, and leaped towards the anaconda. When he was about to reach it, he stabbed the sharp spikes down. The spikes pierced through the hard snake scales of the three-eyed anaconda, pierced into its body, and then came out from the other side. Chapter 70, a first look at the wizarding system. The body of the three-eyed anaconda was pierced by Ronan, and it screamed and hissed, with a sharp and piercing sound. Emerald green blood spurted out from the wound of the three-eyed anaconda. All of it splashed on Ronan's wooden armor. Ronan exerted a little force with his right hand, and pulled the spikes of the wooden armor down. The wound of the three-eyed anaconda suddenly became larger, and emerald green blood splashed out, and the anaconda's internal organs followed. Ronan's heart moved, and the spikes of the wooden armor immediately turned into a brown mist and dissipated. He picked up the internal organs that were emitting hot air, stuffed them back into his body, and then cast a healing spell on this hideous and huge wound. The verdant ancient wood's longevity magic power was used by him, and injected into the witchcraft model of healing spell. Suddenly, a little green light gathered around the wound of the anaconda, and soon, it gathered into a ball. After just a few seconds, the anaconda's blood, which was gushing like a spring, almost stopped, with only a little blood seeping out. Ronan cast a spell, while closing the anaconda's wound. The wounds on both sides were closed together, and under the wrapping of the green light, they gradually readhered and slowly healed. The three-eyed anaconda was in agony and panicked. Seeing this human being actually healing himself, it couldn't help but fall into doubt. It gradually stopped screaming and struggling, opened its 3 scarlet snake eyes, and looked at Ronan steadily. After Ronan healed the wound on one side of the three-eyed anaconda, he also used healing magic to heal the wound on the other side. After about 10 minutes, the wound on the other side of the anaconda was also completely healed. Ronan used his spiritual sense to scan again, and found that the anaconda's internal organs were damaged because of his previous attack. So, he cast a healing spell, and the magic power penetrated into the anaconda's body. Under the magical power of healing, the damaged parts of the three-eyed anaconda's internal organs were slowly recovering. At this moment, the three-eyed anaconda was increasingly confused about what the two-legged beast in front of him was going to do. Ronan's spiritual sense swept over, and saw that the three-eyed anaconda was unharmed, so he summoned Hang Meng to analyze the three-eyed anaconda's numerical values. The numerical values are not much different from before I injured it. This difference should be due to blood loss. This is the power of master level healing. Previously, he caused the same wound to a tiger in the forest of the Zeuxan world. It was impossible to heal it with the entry level healing technique. At that time, he could only sigh, peel the tiger skin, go to the capital of Wei, exchange some silver, and have a big meal. But I don't know where the limit of master level healing is. Ronan stood still, thinking to himself. The three-eyed anaconda saw the two-legged beast in front of him fall into deep thought and was defenseless, and his 3 scarlet eyes suddenly shone brightly. It opened its bloody mouth very quickly, saliva splashed everywhere, and the scarlet snake tongue shot out like an arrow, rolling towards Ronan. Ronan just raised his right hand slightly, and his mind connected with the kindling sword in his dinshin. Suddenly, a long green rainbow rushed up, and cut off the entire snake head of the three-eyed anaconda. Ronan waved his hand again, and the kindling sword turned into a tiny green light, and was stored in his dinshin. The huge snake head of the three-eyed anaconda rolled on the ground for a few times before stopping. The scarlet snake tongue was still outside the snake's mouth, and could not be retracted. The 3 snake eyes seemed to still have spirit, and were looking at Ronan. The snake body still had life left, and was shaking constantly. Ronan walked forward, lifted the snake head of the three-eyed anaconda, and put it back on the snake body. He summoned Hangmeng, and aimed the position of the snake head at the cut surface of the snake body. Then, in the witchcraft model of healing, the ancient wood longevity magic power was injected. A little bit of green light appeared on the snake head and the cut surface, gradually gathering into a ball, healing the wound. Time passed little by little. Ronan's Hangmeng had been analyzing the three-eyed anaconda, constantly giving him feedback on the beast's vital signs. He used all his strength to perform the healing spell, but the vital signs were still declining at a relatively fast rate. It can't be saved, Ronan said in his heart, and stopped releasing the healing spell. Then, he dug out the eyes of the three-eyed anaconda, pulled out its sharp teeth, peeled off its snakeskin, collected its blood, and let out its spirit. As for the poison sac, he had no corresponding container, so he had to give up. Ronan quickly collected all the beast materials. Although he couldn't use the beast materials for the time being, he had a lot of storage space, so he collected them first. After all, the price of these beast materials would not be that high. The black market for buying and selling beast materials usually buys beast materials at a low price and then sells them at a high price. Selling warcraft materials privately is against the laws of the kingdom. The price difference is the high profit that the black market sellers get at the risk of being discovered. Kingdom Wizard Academy, Library. Moonlight and starlight are cast above the starry sky of the library. Ronan, who drank the transformation potion, flipped through the books under the light of the stars and the moon. The Hangmeng in his mind recorded the contents of the books. These days, Ronan can be said to be like a sponge, absorbing all kinds of knowledge in the wizard system. He roughly understood the wizard system and knew that in the wizard system, the general division of wizard cultivation is divided into 3 systems: elemental system, bloodline system, and mysterious system. The elemental system is a wizard who mainly studies the 5 elements of gold, wood, water, fire, and earth. This type of wizard accounts for the largest proportion in the kingdom. The bloodline system uses the blood of magic beasts to change itself, thereby obtaining a strong body and the ability of magic beasts. This type of wizard in the kingdom is usually dedicated to the transformation of the knight's body. The famous blood wizard Ronan is such a wizard. However, because the experiments he conducted were too inhumane and the transformed objects were powerful and threatened the safety of the kingdom, he was not tolerated by the royal family. The mysterious department is a wizard who studies fate and practices divination, astrology and other arts. This kind of wizard is also called a prophet. But there are not many such wizards, because if you concentrate on studying the knowledge of the mysterious department, you often have no combat effectiveness. However, the royal family will hire prophets as consultants to predict for them. However, the prophets can only capture a little fragment of fate and cannot see the overall situation. Therefore, their predictions are always sometimes accurate and sometimes inaccurate. In addition to these 3 departments, there are also alchemy departments, spiritual departments, life departments, necromancy departments, etc. Ronan sighed at the vastness and complexity of wizard knowledge while recording it in a book. After recording, he put it back and took out another book and opened it. When he turned to this book, his eyes suddenly lit up. This book records not the knowledge of the 3 wizard systems, but the knowledge of the magnetic field system. The magic that is cultivated by studying the magnetic field system is called magnetic field magic. The reason why Ronan is interested is that he saw one of the functions of magnetic field magic. It allows the practitioner to release the magnetic field force and then float up and fly. Chapter 71 Magnetic Field Witchcraft. After Ronan saw the book on magnetic field witchcraft, he immediately read it layer by layer. He memorized all the knowledge of magnetic field witchcraft that a second-class witchcraft apprentice could learn in the library. There are only 2 witchcrafts recorded in the knowledge book of magnetic field witchcraft. However, if you want to perform these 2 magnetic field witchcrafts, you need to learn a lot of knowledge about magnetic fields and magnetic forces. Most of the books about magnetic field witchcraft in the library are about magnetic fields and magnetic forces. These 2 witchcrafts are both first level superior. One witchcraft is called magnetic torrent. After performing this witchcraft, the magic power can be converted into a magnetic torrent, flowing in the flesh, and then the magnetic force can be released to form a magnetic field. The external magnetic force can be manipulated by the wizard, and it can repel the Earth's magnetic force to achieve air gliding. In addition, after mastering this witchcraft, the external magnetic force can also be used to manipulate weapons. The magnetic field wizard apprentice, just by studying this witchcraft, can fight and escape, and has already had a good combat power. The other one was primary magnetic field rotation. This witchcraft was a witchcraft that strengthened the body. After performing this witchcraft, the life magnetic field could be stimulated briefly, increasing the physical strength. However, if this witchcraft was performed excessively, it would cause damage to the body. After Ronan recorded the knowledge of magnetic field witchcraft, he couldn't wait to try it. So, he left the library, the academy, and returned to the small bungalow in the middle city. He had an idea, and traveled to the woods of the Zeuxan world. After changing into the clothes of the Zeuxan world, he began to practice the two witchcrafts. Although, before practicing these two witchcrafts, he had to learn the knowledge of magnetic field and magnetic force in the library. But he wanted to learn, while practicing with the help of Han Meng. Ronan first practiced magnetic torrent. He recited the spell according to the witchcraft book. As the obscure syllables came out of his mouth, a small part of the ancient wood longevity magic power in his body turned into a magnetic flow, which quickly flowed around his body. Magnetism and magnetic field can be controlled by his mind. At this moment, as soon as the magnetic flow appeared, he felt that his body had become much heavier. It seemed that a great gravity was imposed on him. Ronan immediately knew that it was the magnetic force of the magnetic flow that attracted the Earth's magnetic force. So, he thought about reversing the magnetic force. Suddenly, the magnetic force of the magnetic flow and the Earth's magnetic force repelled each other. The whole person floated up. He floated up slowly and stopped when he reached about 3 meters high. He was still chanting the spell. Magnetic torrent, beginner 10%, magnetic torrent, beginner 11%. As the proficiency of magnetic torrent continued to increase, the magnetic flow he could transform became larger and larger. The height of the ascent was also gradually increasing, until he rose to 10 meters. Ronan tried to manipulate the magnetic force and glide in the air. He thought about it, and began to reverse the direction of the magnetic force. Suddenly, he only slightly reversed the direction, and the whole person crashed into the ground obliquely like an arrow. He immediately had an idea, and used the wood armor technique. A layer of tough brown wood armor immediately wrapped his whole body. Bang! Ronan crashed into the ground like a huge rock falling from the sky, stirring up a cloud of dust. He propped himself up with both hands, and climbed up from the ground. Then he had an idea, and removed the wood armor technique, and the wood armor on his body turned into brown smoke and dissipated. Fortunately, I have the wood armor technique, so I won't get hurt, and won't be covered in dust. Magnetic force is really hard to control. Ronan thought to himself, reviewing the failure process just now, and after having a plan in mind, he recited the spell of magnetic torrent again, and took off again. 2 hours later. Magnetic torrent, proficiency 65%. After reaching the proficiency level, he successfully established the witchcraft model of magnetic torrent in his mind. There is no need to chant a spell, just a thought in his mind, and he can float in the air. At this time, magnetic force flows in his body and the magnetic field is released. The whole person was gliding slowly in the air at a height of 10 meters. Some shorter trees slowly moved under him. It's done. Ronan was slightly happy. After 2 hours of training, he could finally fly smoothly in the air without falling to the ground. Try to speed up. Ronan immediately used his mind to mobilize the magnetic force. Swish. Suddenly, he flew through the air like an arrow. However, the direction of his flight was off again, and he was still falling down. Seeing that he was about to hit a tree, Ronan immediately had an idea, and changed the direction of the magnetic force. Swish. The direction suddenly reversed, and the whole person shot backwards in the direction of his feet. Ronan controlled the magnetic force again. However, the speed increased, and the difficulty of magnetic control increased. After his whole person shuttled back and forth in the air very quickly several times, he finally fell diagonally again, and there was another big tree in front of him. He immediately stopped the magnetic torrent, and performed the wood armor technique. Bang! his whole body crashed into the tree. The tree broke immediately where he hit it. The tree tops fell down with a loud bang, and the fallen leaves rustled through the air. Ronan fell to the ground. Bang! He fell to the ground with his feet facing down. The dust under his feet immediately splashed high. Because of the protection of the wooden armor, he fell from the sky without getting hurt. After practicing for a night, Ronan was finally able to glide quickly in the sky. He used the magnetic torrent, circled in the air for a few times, and then landed lightly. Magnetic torrent, mastery 62%. After practicing for a night, the magnetic torrent was also mastered. Take a break, go have breakfast first. Ronan thought of the silver money left in his storage bag from selling tiger skins, so he used the magnetic torrent again, and glided out of the woods. After having breakfast, Ronan returned to the woods where he practiced magnetic torrent. He had practiced flying with magnetism, but he had not practiced controlling objects with magnetism. He immediately used the ancient wood's immortality magic power, and injected it into the magnetic torrent witchcraft model. Suddenly, a magnetic force rushed through his body. He had an idea, and applied the magnetism to a fist-sized stone. Swish! The stone immediately flew out, and shot diagonally upward. Bang! The stone hit a tree trunk, stirring up wood chips and embedding them. Using magnetism to control objects is also a good means of attack. Thinking of this, Ronan took out the elven dagger he bought in Diagon Alley a few months ago from his storage black ring. He manipulated the magnetism, and went towards the elven dagger. The elven dagger immediately rose slowly, and circled around him as he manipulated the magnetism. Then, he had an idea, and pushed the elven dagger with magnetism. Immediately, the elven dagger shot out, and a silver light flashed in the air. With a thud, it penetrated into a tree trunk all the way to the handle. Chapter 70 To the Light of the Holy Tree. In the morning, Ronan got up from the bed, opened the quilt, got out of bed, put on a pair of straw sandals, and walked towards his botanical garden. After entering the botanical garden, the scene in front of him expanded, and a room with an area of about 60 square meters appeared in front of him. In the room, the plants were lush. Ronan had planned to go to the library of the Kingdom Wizard Academy again today to record wizard knowledge. But after talking about this with Paul last night, Paul became a little emotional. Paul had already completed the witchcraft model of Burning Hell Flame 2 days ago. After building the witchcraft model, Paul was happy and wanted to go out and indulge himself. After all, he was born active, and he was really bored after being secluded for many days. But 2 days ago, he heard that Ronan was going to the library, and he was afraid that the matter of the transformation potion would be exposed, so he could only stay at home obediently. After 2 days of enduring, he was almost crazy. Ronan didn't want to change himself into Paul's appearance and go out, and Paul couldn't help going out, causing both of them to be exposed, so he had to let Paul go out. Ronan put away his thoughts and cast his eyes on the mother tree of the natal immortal tree. The mother tree is now more than 2 meters tall. The branches and leaves are becoming more and more luxuriant, and its crown has the potential to overwhelm other spiritual plants. Ronan injected the ancient wood immortality magic power into the witchcraft model of the speed growth technique. A thick green beam of light fell on the mother tree of the natal immortal tree. The walls of the botanical garden and his face were all reflected in a layer of green light. Under the magic of the speed growth technique, Ronan felt that the mother tree of the natal immortal tree was bursting with vitality. He summoned Hung Meng and analyzed the immortal tree. Spiritual plant, natal immortal tree year 94. It's almost 100 years. Ronan was excited when he saw this year. Once the 100 years are up, the greenwood spirit body will be formed. Ronan poured the ancient wood immortality magic power into the witchcraft model and used the speed growth technique with all his strength. The ancient wood immortality mana in the Danshan was continuously transformed into the magic of speed growth technique and acted on the mother tree of the natal immortal tree. After half an hour, Ronan's mana was completely exhausted. With the feedback from himself and the 2 natal immortal trees, the mana in the Danshan was restored at a very fast speed. Taking advantage of the time when the mana was restored, Ronan left the botanical garden and refined the growth green liquid. Growth green liquid, mastery 12%. Ronan refined several portions of growth green liquid, took it with the wizard's hand, and went to the botanical garden. He first poured one portion of the growth green liquid on the mother tree of the natal immortal tree. The feeling of vitality in the mother tree emerged in his heart again. Then, he poured another portion of the growth green liquid on the child tree of the natal immortal tree. While pouring, he called up Hang Meng to analyze the tree. A fine blue light passed over the child tree. Then, a stream of information emerged in his mind. Spiritual plant, life tree year 16. This sapling is now just a small tree that is not even knee high. It refines the spiritual energy of heaven and earth and feeds some of it back to Ronan. But I don't know when there will be another tree species. Ronan thought to himself, what if his life tree sapling became a large forest? The spiritual energy of heaven and earth is absorbed by this large forest, like a torrent, and after being refined, it flows into his danshan. What a spectacular scene it would be at that time. After pouring out another portion of the growth green liquid, Ronan went down to the cellar where the Kingling Kian bamboo was planted. After going down to the cellar, the space in front of him expanded again. The cellar was originally narrow, but he used extended magic pattern to expand the space of the cellar. After all, the Kingling Kian bamboo grew taller and taller, and he couldn't keep digging the cellar deeper. In front of him, there were a total of 7 Kingling Kian bamboos. The extra part was a small section of other Kingling Kian bamboo that he cut off and buried in the soil using the fast growth technique to make it take root. While pouring the green liquid for growth, he called up Hang Meng to analyze it. Suddenly, a glimmer of light flashed in his eyes. Spiritual plant, Kingling Kian bamboo year 1000. Finally, there is a Kingling Kian bamboo that is 1000 years old. In this way, he can have an extra Kingling sword made by using the 1000-year-old Kingling Kian bamboo. The other Kingling Kian bamboos planted at the same time are also nearly 1000 years old. He plans to let the other Kingling Kian bamboos continue to grow, and when a bamboo grows to 2000 years old, he will use it to refine the Kingling sword. To refine the Kingling sword, metals need to be collected as reinforcement materials. So, he left this Kingling Kian bamboo alone and continued to cultivate it and cut it when he needed to refine the Kingling sword. After Ronan poured the green liquid for growth, he left the cellar. He manipulated the wizard's hand and put the bottle of green liquid back on the experimental table. At this time, his mana had recovered almost completely, so he used the fast growth technique on the mother tree of the natal immortal tree. At the same time, he analyzed it with Hang Meng. After a while, the age of the natal immortal tree reached 95. At this moment, a strange feeling suddenly arose in his body. At the same time, the natal immortal tree, which was originally ordinary, actually emitted a faint golden light. This golden light spread faintly and shone on his body. He immediately felt that his strength, spirit and mana had improved. He thought of the light of the elf treasure tree. However, the light of the elf treasure tree was the kind of white light that faintly shone with 7 colors, and his natal immortal tree exuded a light golden glow. It is recorded in the book that elves who have bathed in the glow of the elf treasure tree will be enhanced. The life-giving tree, which was refined from the spirit tree, showed this characteristic of the spirit tree. After reaching 95 years old, Ronan immediately called up Hang Meng and analyzed his own status. Suddenly, a stream of information emerged in his mind. You have been blessed by the light of the holy tree. Status effect 1. Under the glow, strength, spirit, and mana are increased. Increase ratio 3%. 2. Bathed in the glow, strength, spirit, and mana slowly increase permanently. You have been blessed by the heart of nature. Current status, plant affinity. Status effect, when next to a plant, strength, spirit, and mana are increased. Increase ratio, determined by the quality and number of plants. Increase ratio 12%. Amplification range 30 meters. Now, he has 2 status blessings. After looking at the status, Ronan looked at the life-giving tree that was emitting a light golden light. Although there are many glowing trees among the magical plants in the wizard world, he still felt that this pale golden light made this originally ordinary life tree stand out. I wonder if the light can be concealed, Ronan thought, and then immersed his mind into the mother tree of the life tree. Chapter 73. The remains of the legendary wizard. After Ronan's spirit sank into the tree of immortality, he tried to use his spirit to converge the light golden light. The tree of immortality was his appendage, and it was considered a part of his body. Logically, he should be able to control the tree of immortality. Soon, Ronan found the trick to control the tree of immortality. Immediately, his mind moved. The light golden light on the tree of immortality was converged. The tree of immortality returned to its ordinary appearance. Except for its more luxuriant branches and leaves, it was not much different from the trees in the forest. In the future, when you are next to the tree of immortality, release the light of the holy tree. When you leave the bungalow, you will converge the light of the holy tree. Ronan thought, and his mind moved. The ordinary tree of immortality, every branch and every leaf, once again lit up with a light golden light. Ronan was blessed by the light of the holy tree again. He continued to cast the fast growth technique on the tree of immortality. When his mana was about to run out, he sat cross-legged on the ground and practiced the ancient wood immortality technique. 10 days later, in the botanical garden, the natal immortal tree was emitting a light golden light. Ronan sat cross-legged under the natal immortal tree and practiced. He made a sword gesture, and 2 green rays suddenly appeared in front of him. The next moment, the green rays disappeared, revealing 2 kindling swords. After cultivating the 1000-year-old kindling Kian bamboo, Ronan bought the Wudyan magic crystal and Kingyuan copper the next day. Then, he cut down the 1000-year-old kindling Kian bamboo and sacrificed it to refine another kindling sword. In the next 10 days, he often practiced the Kingmu sword technique. He breathed slowly, and according to the Kingmu sword technique, he practiced the mysterious skills. The ancient wood immortality magic power rose from the Danshan, first according to the Kingmu sword technique's exercise route, and after a circle in the body, it was injected into the 2 kindling swords. Then, under his control, the mana circulated in the 2 kindling swords and returned to his body. In this way, the ancient wood longevity mana circulated between his body and the 2 swords. The feeling between him and the 2 swords gradually deepened. He called upon Meng and adjusted the progress of the practice. Kingmu sword art, 5th level 99%. It's almost a breakthrough. If you break through to the 6th level, you can master the sword move sword shadow splitting. Ronan immediately collected his mind and continued to practice. Perhaps it was because Kingmu sword art was a wood attribute sword art. With the blessing of Heart of Nature and Light of the Holy Tree, the speed of practicing Kingmu sword art was faster than he expected. After about a moment, Ronan's clothes suddenly fluttered. The 2 kindling swords flashed with green light. Breakthrough. Ronan called upon Meng and adjusted the progress of the practice. Kingmu sword art, level 6, 1%. He followed the instructions in the Kingmu sword art, practiced the ancient wood longevity skill, and made another sword art. Suddenly, one of the kindling swords flashed, and 2 sword shadows with shining green light were separated. He used his magic power, and his mind moved again. Another kindling sword also separated 2 sword shadows. At this time, there were 6 swords hanging in front of him. The compelling sword energy emanated from the 6 swords. Ronan used his spirit, and the 6 swords circled around him like swimming fish. He moved his mind, and the 2 main swords flew back, and were caught in his hands. Then, his figure disappeared, and he traveled to the world of cultivation with the 2 kindling swords. Ronan's figure appeared in a forest in the world of cultivation. After appearing, he immediately threw the 2 main swords in his hand. The 2 kindling swords turned into 2 green lights, like swimming dragons, flying towards the sky. Ronan made a sword gesture and performed sword shadow splitting. The 2 kindling swords immediately split into sword shadows. Then, under his control, the 6 swords were arranged in a row, like a line, flying towards a mountain. It took a lot of mental energy to manipulate 6 swords at the same time. Fortunately, he practiced the Shenyanju and his mental power was strong, so he could withstand this consumption. If it were other key refining level 8 cultivators, it would be unlikely that they would manipulate 6 magic tools at the same time. The 6 swords were arranged together, emitting a strong sword energy. After it pierced the mountain peak, it immediately made a loud bang. It was the sword energy that broke the rocks. A huge gap appeared on the mountain peak. Huge pieces of rubble fell from the gap and rolled on the hillside, making a rumbling sound. Ronan waved his hand, and the 6 swords flew back one after another, turning into 6 green rays, sinking into his wrist, and then entering the meridians, and going straight to the dungeon. Then, the 6 green rays merged into 2. After the light faded, 2 kindling swords were left hanging in his dungeon, nourished by the misty ancient wood longevity magic power. After Ronan returned to the wizard world, he went to Paul's residence and found Paul. He knew that Paul stayed at home for the next few days, practicing meditation. The next day, he drank the transformation potion, turned into Paul's appearance, and entered the Kingdom Wizard Academy. After entering the library, Ronan was summoning Han Meng and recording the contents of the book, but he found that a blonde man of about 18 or 19 years old was walking towards him. Ronan put the book back on the bookshelf and was about to leave. This person should know Paul, and he didn't want to contact this person, so as not to be exposed. Paul. Unexpectedly, this man seemed to have something urgent to say to Paul. He walked over quickly, called out in a low voice, and then said, "Paul, have you heard that someone found a legendary wizard ruins overseas? Should we go and explore?" Ronan pretended to think about it, then said, "I'll think about it," and said goodbye and left. "Paul, are you still considering it?" After hearing Ronan's words, the blonde man said, "Didn't you always say that you wanted to break through to the 3rd level wizard apprentice as soon as possible? The legendary wizard's ruins must have a lot of treasures. Maybe there are potions or potion formulas left by the wizard. After all, this is a legendary wizard, and his lowest relics can also be of great help to us. Let's go together and call a few more people to go together so that we can take care of each other. I still need to think about it," Ronan said, and walked to the other side, took out a book and read it by himself. "Paul, I didn't expect you to be such a coward." The blonde man looked at Ronan like this and didn't want to make himself look bad. He left after saying this. From that day on, Ronan kept recording knowledge in the library. No one spoke to him until 5 o'clock in the afternoon. He left the Kingdom Wizard Academy and walked on the streets of Triumph City. When passing by the market, he seemed to be oblivious to the shouting on the street. As he walked, he thought in his heart, "Should I tell Paul this news? If it were him, he would never explore. If his wizard level was high enough, he could still go and explore. Now both Paul and the blonde man are just wizard apprentices. Once they get there, I'm afraid that the aftermath of a formal wizard battle will hurt them. The probability of death is even greater than that of getting the treasure." Chapter 74, Wood Magic and the Academy, Letter from Home. The reason why Ronan didn't want to tell Paul about this was that he didn't want Paul to go and die. After all, resources are attractive, especially for wizards. In the path of wizard cultivation, as long as more resources are obtained, it is possible to go further and then have a longer life and more powerful power. If Paul heard the news, he would inevitably be tempted by the temporary benefits and follow the team to the wizard ruins. But Ronan thought that if Paul met the blonde man again in the future, he would be suspicious if he didn't know anything. So he had to tell Paul the news. Paul's bungalow in the lower city of Cakesun City. Ronan relayed the blonde man's words to Paul. When Paul heard it, his eyes immediately widened, his brows frowned, and he seemed to be struggling in his heart. Obviously, Paul's heart was moved. The ruins of the legendary wizard, even if they could stroll around the periphery, if they were lucky enough to get the legendary wizard's remains, it would be of great help to them. Paul sat on the chair, his hands were sweating, holding the handle of the chair, tightening and loosening. "Why, have you decided?" Ronan sat at the dining table, holding a copper goblet in his hand, shaking it, and looking at the deep purple wine in it, while asking. Paul closed his eyes, frowned more tightly, and there were beads of sweat on the tip of his nose. He struggled for a while again, then exhaled and said, "I'm not going." Ronan was a little curious. Why? Paul gave him the impression of a person obsessed with power. There is a high probability that he will go to explore the ruins with others. I'm the only one in the Wilson family in this generation. Paul sighed. Ronan only knew that Paul was a poor nobleman, but he didn't know what his family was like. After Paul said this, Ronan chatted with Paul about this matter. Only then did he know that Paul's parents were living in a small town in the central and southern province. Paul's father was a second-level wizard apprentice. Not long after Paul was born, something happened to the Wilson family, and his father's wizard training also went wrong. He was injured by energy particles and could no longer practice wizardry. Paul's wizard aptitude was discovered by his father, so he gave Paul some money and asked him to follow the caravan to Triumph City to see if he could enter the best wizard academy in the kingdom. Later, Paul got what he wanted. Since the news of the legendary wizard spread, ships have set sail at the dock outside Triumph City. Many wizards in Triumph City, whether wizard apprentices or formal wizards, have gone overseas in large numbers. They hope to get the magic tools, potions, manuscripts or other things left by the legendary wizard. Ronan walked into the Kingdom Wizard Academy in Paul's face and found that the aisles of the academy were much emptier than before. After listening to the conversations of some passing wizard apprentices, he learned that some wizard apprentices followed their mentors to the ruins. Some wizard apprentices followed their family wizards to explore the ruins. Wizard apprentices are at the bottom of the wizard world and are weak. If they go alone, it is very dangerous. But as long as there is a formal wizard to lead, the safety will be increased a lot. Ronan stepped onto a path paved with white gravel, passed by several apple trees, walked past a hot spring with exquisite statues, and came to the door of the library. After entering the library, he continued to record the knowledge of witchcraft. It took another 2 days, and Ronan finally recorded all the knowledge that a second-level wizard apprentice in the library could obtain with Han Meng. As long as he called up Han Meng, he could look up every paragraph in every book in his mind. There is also wood-related witchcraft knowledge in the library. However, it is not exactly the same as what Awen taught him. After all, in the kingdom, the Druid school is not the only one that studies wood-related witchcraft. The reason why each school is different is that they have different understandings of the same knowledge. Ronan also learned the wood-related knowledge contained in the library books, which verified and complemented what Awen taught. There are 3 wood-related witchcrafts recorded in the library books. 2 first-level medium witchcrafts. One is deadly poison powder, which can release flowers and spray poison powder. One is paralysis tree seed, which can release a group of seeds in the air. As long as the enemy touches the seeds, they will be paralyzed. A first level superior witchcraft, light recovery. As long as this witchcraft is performed under the sun, it can heal wounds and restore physical strength and spirit. This witchcraft, like the healing spell, has its own advantages and disadvantages. Healing spell can be performed on yourself and others, but it only has the effect of healing. And light recovery can only be used by yourself, and there is the limitation of sunlight. But it can heal wounds, restore physical strength and spirit at the same time. After Ronan recorded the knowledge in the library, he stayed in the bungalow for several days to digest this knowledge. On this day, he was in the room, practicing paralysis tree seed. He chanted the spell, stretched out his hand and waved it, and then there were tree seeds, which grew in the air and floated forward. Suddenly, his consciousness felt that someone was approaching the bungalow, so he retracted his hand. All the tree seeds in the air disappeared instantly. Ronan's spiritual sense detected that someone was coming outside, driving a donkey cart. There were wooden boxes and linen bags on the donkey cart. Ronan immediately knew that it was a reply from his family. After moving to the bungalow, he sent a letter to his family, saying that he had moved to a new address. Calculating the time, now should be the time for the reply to arrive in Triumph City. Knock knock knock. After a while, there was a knock on the door of the bungalow. Ronan left the botanical garden and closed the door of the room. Then, he opened the front door of the bungalow and saw a strong man. After bowing to him, he said, "Dear sir, your token has arrived." As he said that, he took out 2 letters from the linen bag. Then, he moved a wooden box down from the donkey cart with great effort. After the messenger left, Ronan pulled the wooden box into the bungalow. He just scanned it with his spiritual sense and knew that the wooden box contained more than 200 Valent gold coins. Because he had money, he only mentioned the relocation in his letter home, but did not ask for money. However, his noble father still sent gold coins. Ronan withdrew his spiritual sense and looked at the 2 letters in his hand. Both letters were sealed with red wax and printed with the family emblem. One letter came from his father's territory, the Redwood territory in the southeast province. The other letter was from his eldest brother, Leon Lawrence, who was currently fighting against the Orc Empire on the northern border. Ronan sat down at the dinner table and poured himself a glass of wine. Then, he opened the letter sent from the family and read it. Chapter 75, Body Transformation, Northern War, next chapter to be published. After reading the letter sent by his father, Ronan was sure that the more than 200 gold coins were funded by his father. The letter also talked about what happened in the family recently. The first thing was that there was an insect infestation in the Redwood Territory. One of the sources of income for the Redwood Territory occupied by his family was to sell the redwood planted in the Redwood Territory to all parts of the kingdom. When an insect infestation occurred, the redwood was eaten by insects, and the losses would become greater and greater. His father was afraid that the loss would be too great, so after weighing the pros and cons, he spent a lot of money to invite a second-level wizard apprentice who practiced wood witchcraft. This second-level wizard apprentice summoned several wood element guardian spirits in their family's redwood forest to protect the trees from pests. In this way, the losses in their redwood territory were curbed. The second thing was that his younger brother, now 14 years old, had been promoted to Silver Knight. After being promoted to Silver Knight, he was not far from being a Gold Knight. After reaching the peak of the Golden Knight, if the knight wants to make progress, he must first transform his body and secondly wear enchanted equipment. His brother found a wizard apprentice and tried to practice meditation. He found that he did not have any wizard talent and could not transform himself through wizard means. In the future, he would have to ask others for help to transform his body. So, his brother wanted to learn about the witchcraft of transforming the body in advance through family letters. Ronan himself did not approve of his brother's body transformation. There are two methods of body transformation that he knows now. One is blood implantation, implanting various magic beast blood into the knight to increase the knight's muscle strength and reaction speed. This method may not only be life-threatening, but sometimes it will also make the transformer lose its nature. The other is energy particle amplification. That is, using energy particles to temper the body to achieve the purpose of enhancing the strength of the body. This method is also dangerous. If the wizard operates on himself, the danger is relatively small. Because operating on himself, he can feel whether his body can withstand the energy particles and can adjust it at any time. But if you operate on other people, you don't know how they feel. When they feel uncomfortable, it's too late to adjust. At this time, the energy particles have already caused damage to the body. If you use a small amount of energy particles to temper the body, it will not achieve the effect of tempering. Only some wizards with strong spirits, keen perception, and rich experience can use this method to temper the body of others. Ronan heard from Paul that most of the knights serving in the kingdom now still use blood implantation to enhance muscle strength. Because this method is the most convenient and effective, and the kingdom has a blood implantation method that has been tested many times and is not very dangerous, the knights can generally strengthen their bodies and will not die. Ronan couldn't think of how to reply to his brother for a while, so he gave up and opened his eldest brother's letter. After reading it once, Ronan knew that the war between the Kingdom of Valant and the Orc Empire was now in a tense state. Although there are more wizards in the kingdom than in the Orc Empire, but the Orc Empire has stronger troops. The Orcs' reproductive capacity is extremely strong. Moreover, the blood wizard Sophie Lauren seems to have a method to create orcs, which can create orcs quickly. After these orcs were created, they were not very intelligent, violent, and liked to kill. However, after Sophie's blood transformation witchcraft, they became powerful and fearless. The kingdom wizard cast witchcraft to kill wave after wave of orcs. Then, there would still be orcs rushing up, as if they could not be killed at all. He saw from the letter that his brother's command ability on the battlefield was outstanding. After several battles, the casualties of the mahogany soldiers he led were the lowest among all the soldiers. Even the royal family let the remnants of other territories join his command. The army he could command was getting bigger and bigger. He could even command the army and cooperate with the wizard to kill some orc teams with strong combat power. His brother also said that in a battle, he saw the legendary limb joining knight. This knight has an orc's face, bloated all over, with various arms attached to his body, holding knives, chain hammers, shields. Moreover, these weapons are also enchanted. A few attacks from a formal wizard will be blocked by the shield. The limb-attached knight also has a very strong body and vitality. After the formal wizard smashes the shield, he has to release several spells to completely kill the limb-attached knight. At the end of the letter, his brother wished him a smooth practice on the path of wizardry, and his brother also wrote a letter home and asked someone to send it to Hangmu territory, so he didn't need to write a letter home to relay it. After reading the 2 letters, Ronan put them into the storage black ring. Then, he went out, rented a carriage, transported the wooden box to the Lani vault, and deposited the gold coins into his own registered account. These days, Ronan used Hangmeng to go through almost all the knowledge in the library. He felt that there was not much knowledge in the library. Most of it was the elemental wizard knowledge. Some other departments, such as the knowledge of medicine and mechanical alchemy in the alchemy department, and space knowledge, are very rare. Ronan talked to Paul about this, and learned that the library actually contained mostly superficial knowledge in a certain field. The main purpose of setting up a library is to lay the foundation for wizard apprentices. If you want to further your studies, you have to spend gold coins or college points to find professors in the college to learn. Of course, the knowledge simply learned with college points and gold coins is not precious. The knowledge that a formal wizard is willing to exchange for gold coins is definitely not the knowledge he has spent a lot of effort to research and is proud of. Paul said that the truly precious knowledge is the knowledge that a professor teaches after recognizing a wizard apprentice and accepting him as his student. This knowledge has the in-depth understanding of a certain field of knowledge by formal wizards. Ronan originally wanted to use Paul's identity to attend classes at the Kingdom Wizard Academy to learn deeper witchcraft knowledge, especially to practice a deeper level of space witchcraft. This is related to his further expansion of the space of the botanical garden. However, after thinking about it, he gave up. Attending classes requires college points and gold coins. If you spend college points and gold coins multiple times to attend the same professor's class, it means that the listener can gain something from the class. If he appears in each class with Paul's face, but Paul meets someone else, he will be found to know almost nothing but fire magic. This will increase their risk of exposure. The next chapter is a chapter on the shelves, which is expected to be released at around 6 PM on Saturday. For updates, please readers contribute a first order. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.